Our MC, Jiang Xiaoyong, should have been the man standing at the top of the apocalypse. He built his base with his own hands, gathered supplies, and fought to survive in a world that had already gone to hell. But like an idiot, he trusted the wrong woman. The fiancée standing by his side was nothing but a shameless snake. She stole his inheritance, ran to another man behind his back, turned his own people against him, and when Jiang had no value left, she threw our MC into a cage full of zombies and stood there watching him get ripped apart alive. But that was her biggest mistake, because instead of dying for good, Jiang opened his eyes and came back 1 month before the apocalypse even started. The world was still peaceful, the zombies had not appeared yet, and that same disgusting woman was already in front of him again, still pretending to love him while trying to take his house just like before. Only this time, our MC already knew what kind of trash she really was. He remembered every lie, every betrayal, and the way she watched him die without blinking. And now that he's back with all his memories, and a blind box system that can hand him insane rewards before the world collapses, Jiang is done being used. This time, he's going to throw that woman out of his life, take everything he needs before the apocalypse begins, and rise so high that everyone who betrayed him will be left crawling beneath him. Jiang's eyes snap open, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he stares at a ceiling he hasn't seen in years. He's not in a cold factory, he's in a bright, modern apartment. Standing over him is Cui Jing, but she looks different, younger, untouched by the grime of the apocalypse, and currently screaming at him about a house deed. She demands to know why her name hasn't been added yet, her voice full of a sense of entitlement that makes his skin crawl. Jiang stares at her, his mind reeling. He looks at his hands, they are whole, unscarred, and free of blood. He looks around the room, the luxury of the furniture feeling like a hallucination. He asks her what's going on, his voice trembling with a shock she mistakes for weakness. He sits on the sofa, the soft fabric a stark contrast to the concrete floor he died on. He looks at her legs, her high heels, the way she stands over him like she owns him. It hits him like a lightning bolt. He's been reborn. He's back to the time before the world fell apart. He remembers this moment. In his last life, he was a fool, blinded by a fake love. He let Cui Jing swindle away the inheritance his parents left him, leaving him homeless just as the world ended. That he remembers the global catastrophe that followed, the virus that turned humanity into a horde of mindless monsters and plunged civilization into chaos. He remembers the long, grueling years of wandering, the friends he made, and the safe zone they built together with sweat and blood. He remembers how he managed to survive against all odds, only to be destroyed by the very woman he saved from the streets. He looks at her now, seeing the deceit hidden behind her pretty face. She had pretended to be a desperate refugee, winning his sympathy while she was actually a spy sent by his enemies to tear them down from the inside. He watches her as she opens the door for a group of men in a truck, the memory of her betrayal fresh and agonizing. Back in the present, Cui Jing is still ranting, her face twisted in a pout as she demands a bride price of 400,000 yuan, not a penny less. Jiang just stares at her, his gaze cold and piercing, a look she's never seen on his face before. He remains silent, the weight of his past life making her petty demands seem like the buzzing of an insect. She gets frustrated, leaning in and asking if he even heard her. He looks at her crossed arms, the arrogance in her posture, and a single thought echoes in his mind, evil bitch. He knows he can't act impulsively yet. He needs to play his cards right to ensure his survival and her ultimate downfall. He tells her with a chilling calmness that he'll give her a week. Cui Jing is taken aback, her eyes widening in surprise at his sudden change in tone. Before she can argue, he tells her to get out. He literally pushes her toward the door, his grip firm and uncompromising. She stumbles into the hallway, her mouth hanging open in shock. She stares at the closed door, wondering when her lackey became so assertive. Inside, Jiang leans against the door, his heart racing. He walks over to a digital clock on the wall. The blue numbers glow in the dim light, May 7th, 2034. He checks the date again, his breath hitching. He has exactly 1 month. 1 month before the zombies appear, before the cities burn, and before the law of the jungle takes over. He knows he must start preparing immediately. Just as he resolves to move, a sharp ding echoes in his head, and a translucent blue window flickers into existence before his eyes. His pupils dilate as he reads the text. The apocalypse system is now active. A mission notification flashes, apocalypse preparation. The requirements are clear, own a piece of land and prepare a year's supply of provisions. The reward is 10 points, which can be exchanged in a system store. Jiang's mind races. A system? This is the edge he needs. He navigates to the store tab, his eyes scanning the items. There are physical enhancement potions for 20 points, and supply boxes ranging from Apocalypse Farmer to Protagonist level. He realizes that in his previous life, he was so busy saving every penny for Cui Jing's bride price that he left himself malnourished and weak. He won't make that mistake again. He feels the emptiness in his stomach, a reminder of the years of hunger he endured. He looks around his luxury apartment and decides it's time to treat himself while he still can. He picks up his phone and opens a delivery app called Are You Full? He knows that in a month, the finest delicacies will be nothing but a memory. He orders a massive spread from a legendary Michelin 3-star restaurant, the kind of food he could never afford before. When the food arrives, the table is covered in steaming dishes, braised pork, glistening shrimp, and rich soups that smell like heaven. He picks up a piece of the 300 yuan braised pork with his chopsticks, his hand shaking slightly with anticipation. As the first bite hits his tongue, the flavor is so intense it feels like an explosion. It's too delicious, a sensory overload that brings tears to his eyes. As he devours the meal, a golden light begins to radiate from his body. A notification pops up, devouring. He can feel the nutrients being absorbed at an impossible rate, his muscles knitting together, his skin tightening, and a raw power surging through his veins. His old clothes literally tear off his body as his frame expands, revealing a lean, powerful physique carved from pure energy. He feels like a new man, stronger than he ever was in his prime. Suddenly, his phone starts buzzing incessantly on the table. He glances at the screen. It's Wen Shuya, Cui Jing's best friend and fellow manipulator. He scoffs, knowing exactly why she's calling. He answers, and immediately, a shrill voice starts blasting through the speaker, accusing him of being heartless. She screams that Cui Jing only wanted him to prove his love and that if he can't even give her his property, he never loved her at all. She tells him that if he doesn't bring the house deed and 1,000,000 yuan in cash to apologize, he should expect a breakup. Zhang's expression doesn't flicker. He just tells her to get lost, his voice like ice. He hangs up before she can respond, tossing the phone aside. He has bigger things to worry about than the tantrums of a green tea bitch. He sits back, his mind focusing on the system mission. Own a piece of land. He needs a place that is defensible, near water, and close to a forest. He envisions a fortress, the strongest stronghold the world has ever seen. The next day, Jiang walks into the gleaming lobby of a high-end real estate office. The air is thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the quiet hum of business. He stands there in his simple hoodie and jeans, looking out of place among the suits. A man in a sharp gray suit, Manager Zhu, approaches him with a sneer. He looks Jiang up and down, his eyes full of disdain for someone he deems a broke loser. A young female agent, Xiao Ning, tries to step forward to help, but Zhu barks at her to go move boxes in the back, claiming they have a lot of toilet paper to handle. He tells her she has no sense, implying that Jiang isn't worth their time. Xiao Ning tries to protest, pointing out that Jiang is a client, but Zhu just laughs. He tells Jiang to his face that he looks like someone who can't even afford a toilet. He makes a bet, his voice loud enough for the whole lobby to hear, that if Jiang can even buy a toilet, he'll live-stream himself eating poop. Jiang doesn't flinch. He just looks at the manager with a calm, predatory smile. He tells the man that he'll make sure to find him some fresh, steaming hot ones later. The lobby goes silent as Jiang reaches into his pocket and pulls out a sleek, black American Express Centurion card. The black card. The manager's face turns a sickly shade of gray, his eyes bulging as he stares at the symbol of limitless wealth. The crowd of onlookers gasps, their whispers turning from mockery to awe. They realize they are standing in the presence of a true big spender. Xiao Ning's eyes light up as she realizes the opportunity before her. She steps forward, her voice trembling with excitement as she offers to give him a detailed introduction. Manager Zhu is frozen, his arrogance replaced by a cold, numbing dread. He tries to stammer an excuse, but Jiang ignores him, following Xiao Ning to a private consultation area. He sits down, and she hands him a stack of land listings. He waves them away, telling her he has specific requirements. He wants land near mountains and water, with running water and large buildings or factories already on it. Xiao Ning thinks for a moment, her brow furrowed. She mentions a piece of land in the East District, the Tea City land. Manager Zhu, trying to regain some dignity, scoffs and says that land is a disaster. The factories are unfinished, the construction leader ran off, and it's a legal mess that can't be sold. Jiang's eyes sharpen. Unfinished factories. That's perfect. It means the skeleton of his fortress is already built. He can reinforce the walls, build guard towers, and install barbed wire without starting from scratch. It will save him months of time he doesn't have. He tells her he'll take it and asks to sign the contract immediately. Xiao Ning is stunned, asking if he's sure about the unfinished projects. Jiang just grins and tells her to hurry up, someone is waiting to eat fresh poop. A few minutes later, the transaction is complete. Jiang has paid a 300,000 yuan down payment. Manager Zhu is clutching the receipt, his hands shaking so hard the paper rattles. He can't believe it. Someone actually spent millions on a wasteland. Jiang stands over him, his shadow looming large. He tells the buddy that it's time for his performance and promises to send him a super chat during the live stream. Outside, the scene is chaotic. Jiang's associates have already started the stream, and a crowd has gathered to watch the arrogant manager fulfill his disgusting bet. Jiang watches for a moment, a sense of grim satisfaction settling in his chest. One enemy down, many more to go. The system pings again, land requirement met. Now, he needs more money for supplies. He knows that pawning his current house will only get him 3 million yuan, which isn't nearly enough for the first phase of construction. He needs a plan to get more cash, and he needs it fast. As he walks through the city, he spots a familiar figure, Li Shuxiong, the fat man from his future nightmare. The man is currently a wealthy businessman, unaware of the doom approaching. He sees Jiang and wonders what the loser is doing in this part of town. Meanwhile, in a lavish dressing room, Cui Jing is carefully applying lipstick, her mind filled with thoughts of the money she expects to get from Jiang. Her phone rings. It's Wen Shuya. The news she receives sends her into a blind rage. Jiang bought land, with her money. She screams into the phone, her face contorting with greed. She vows to expose him online and take what she believes is hers. Back at his apartment, Jiang is deep in thought when a loud banging erupts at his door. He opens it to find Cui Jing and Wen Shuya standing there, their faces red with fury. Cui Jing storms in, demanding to know how he dared to spend her money on land. Jiang just looks at her, his expression one of pure boredom. He asks her what she's talking about, his calm demeanor only fueling her rage. She screams that the bride price money is hers and that since he bought land with it, the land belongs to her. Jiang lets out a short, sharp laugh. He calls her insane and then drops the bombshell. He knows about her affair with Li Shuxiong. The color drains from Cui Jing's face. She stammers, trying to deny it, but the look in Jiang's eyes tells her he knows everything. He tells them both to get lost, his voice booming with a power that makes them flinch. He slams the door in their faces, leaving them shivering in the hallway. Cui Jing is panicked, wondering how he could possibly know about her secret meetings. Wen Shuya, ever the opportunist, looks at her friend with a hidden glint of malice. She realizes that if Cui Jing has messed things up this badly, maybe she can be the one to swoop in and take the land for herself. A few days later, Jiang is at the construction site in the East District. The area is a sprawling expanse of half-finished concrete shells and rusted rebar. He meets with Foreman Lee from the Paru Construction Company. He lays out his vision: reinforced walls, guard towers, blast-proof doors, and bulletproof glass. The foreman is skeptical, asking which powerful force Jiang has offended to need such a fortress. Jiang tells him not to ask too much and just give him a price for a 1-month completion. The foreman hesitates, saying it's impossible, but Jiang shuts him down, telling him there are plenty of others who will do it if he won't. The foreman finally relents, his greed overcoming his caution. He asks for 20 million yuan, with a 5 million yuan deposit up front. Jiang agrees, promising to transfer the money within a week. As he's leaving the site, a soft, melodic voice calls out to him. He turns to see Wen Shuya walking toward him, her outfit carefully chosen to be both innocent and provocative. She calls him Brother Jiang with a sweet smile, acting as if the confrontation at his apartment never happened. She looks around the site, asking if he's building a villa and complimenting the scenery. Jiang sees right through her green tea act. He knows she's just a vulture looking for a new carcass. He tells her coldly that what he builds is none of her business and brushes her hand off his arm. Wen Shuya is stunned by his rejection. Normally, just a touch would make him blush, but now he has no reaction at all. She watches him walk away, her eyes narrowing with determination. She won't miss this golden opportunity. If she can push Cui Jing out of the way, this land, and the man who owns it, will be hers. Back at his apartment, Jiang looks at the 2 red folders on his coffee table, the deeds to his properties. Pawning them only got him 3 million, which isn't enough for the foreman's deposit. He needs more money, and he needs it now. He stares out the window at the city skyline, a dark thought beginning to form. The apocalypse is coming anyway. The banks, the contracts, the laws, none of it will matter in 30 days. He realizes he can sell his house to multiple people at once, collecting down payments from everyone before the world ends. Jiang Xiaoyong sits in the heavy silence of his apartment, the dim light of the afternoon casting long, jagged shadows across the floor. On the low coffee table before him lie 2 red folders, the deeds to his properties, the only legacy his parents left behind. In his previous life, these papers were his death warrant, swindled away by a woman who never loved him. But now, his fingers trace the embossed gold lettering with a cold, calculating precision. He knows that in exactly 30 days, the world will descend into a nightmare of blood and rotting flesh. The banks will vanish, the government will crumble, and these legal documents will be worth less than the paper they're printed on. A dark, predatory smile spreads across his face as a plan takes root in his mind. If the apocalypse is imminent, why play by the rules of a dying world? He decides right then and there to sell the house to as many people as possible, collecting down payments from every greedy soul he can find. It's a scam that would land him in prison in any other timeline, but here, it's his ticket to survival. He clenches his fist, his blue eyes burning with a newfound ruthlessness. Let's do it, he thinks, the vow echoing in the empty room. Suddenly, the silence is shattered by a violent, rhythmic thudding against his front door. The wood groans under the force of the impact, and a raspy, demanding voice tears through the hallway. Jiang doesn't need to look through the peephole to know who it is. It's Grandpa Li, the downstairs neighbor whose greed is as legendary as his bad breath. In the past, this old man was a constant thorn in Jiang's side, using every underhanded tactic imaginable to force Jiang to sell the third floor. He's painted the door with insults, piled rotting trash in the hallway, and even jammed the locks with glue. Jiang stands up, his movements fluid and calm, and walks toward the door. He swings it open to find the old man standing there, face flushed a deep purple, his mouth already twisted into a practiced sneer. Grandpa Li immediately launches into a tirade, accusing Jiang of being out clubbing and wasting his life. Jiang doesn't offer a defense. He simply stares at the man with an intensity so chilling that the old man's words die in his throat. The air between them turns heavy, charged with a power shift the neighbor can't quite comprehend. Jiang cuts him off with a single, sharp word. He tells the man he's had enough of the harassment and, to Grandpa Li's absolute shock, announces that he's ready to sell. The old man's eyes bulge, his jaw dropping as he processes the news he's been waiting years to hear. He can't believe his luck, but Jiang isn't finished. He crosses his arms, looming over the shorter man, and sets his terms with a voice like grinding stones. 5 million yuan, paid in full, in a single transfer. And there's a non-negotiable condition: Jiang stays in the house for another 6 months. He spins a lie about needing the cash to pay off a mortgage on a new property, a story designed to appeal to the old man's sense of financial superiority. Grandpa Li hesitates for a heartbeat, his mind racing to calculate the profit, but the lure of finally owning the entire building is too strong. He agrees, insisting they sign a formal contract immediately to prevent Jiang from backing out. Jiang smirks as he reaches for the door handle, his mind already miles ahead. He doesn't care about the contract or the legality of the deal. In 30 days, the only law will be the law of the jungle. He watches the old man scurry away to gather the funds, thinking to himself that the old bastard can spend his final days guarding a house that will soon become his tomb. Later that evening, the cool blue glow of a smartphone illuminates Jiang's face as he sits on his sofa. He scrolls through his banking app, watching the digital numbers tick upward with a satisfying hum. Between the loans he's already secured and the 5 million from Grandpa Li, he's now sitting on a war chest of 8 million yuan. It's a staggering amount of money, but in the coming world, it's only as valuable as the supplies it can buy. Suddenly, a translucent blue window flickers into existence, hovering in the air before his eyes. The apocalypse system is pulsing with a soft, ethereal light, its interface clean and futuristic. He taps the claim button on the mission screen, a surge of adrenaline spiking in his chest. He has officially met the first requirement, owning land. The system pings with a sharp, melodic ding, awarding him 10 points. He feels a strange, tingly sensation resonate through his body, a physical confirmation that the system is real and that his path to dominance has truly begun. The next morning finds Jiang in the heart of a massive, warehouse-style supermarket, the air thick with the smell of floor wax and industrial refrigeration. He is a blur of motion, his hoodie pulled low as he maneuvers a long line of interconnected shopping carts through the aisles. He isn't browsing, he's harvesting. He grabs bags of rice by the dozen, crates of bottled water, stacks of canned meats, and every medical supply he can find. Around him, the morning shoppers stop and stare, their faces masks of confusion and mockery. They whisper to one another, pointing at the young man who is buying enough provisions to sustain a small village. One man, leaning against his own half-empty cart, lets out a loud, derisive laugh, calling Jiang a fool who's fallen for doomsday rumors. Jiang doesn't even glance in their direction. He can see the system counter ticking up in the corner of his vision. 359 out of 365 days of provisions. He wipes a bead of sweat from his forehead, his muscles burning from the weight of the carts. He knows these people will be the first to starve, the first to turn on each other when the shelves go empty, and he feels nothing but a cold, distant pity for them. A sharp notification echoes in his mind, task completed. 10 more points are added to his balance. Jiang retreats to a quiet, shadowed corner of the warehouse, the system store interface shimmering before him. He ignores the physical enhancement potions for now, his eyes locked on a rare item, the protagonist supply box. It costs exactly 10 points, a high price for a mystery, but Jiang has always been a gambler. He taps the screen, and a brilliant, blinding golden light erupts from the virtual box, filling the aisle and forcing him to squint. When the light finally recedes, a new notification appears, Space Ring Level 1. His breath hitches as he reads the description. 500 cubic meters of internal space, and most importantly, time stands still inside the void. He looks down at his hand to see a sleek, dark metallic band with a glowing purple gem nestled in the center. This is the ultimate tool for survival. He can store fresh meat, hot meals, and volatile medicines, and they will remain in perfect condition forever. He slips the ring onto his finger, feeling a cold, electric hum vibrate through his bones as the artifact bonds with his soul. Just as he's savoring the weight of the ring, a new mission window flashes into existence, 10 years of sustenance. The requirement is massive, and the reward is 20 points, but before he can even begin to plan, a loud, arrogant voice booms through the supermarket aisle. Who's causing trouble here? Jiang turns to see a man in a sharp, expensive gray suit marching toward him, flanked by 2 burly security guards. The man's face is twisted into a sneer of pure condescension. It's Yang Tao, a former high school classmate who spent his teenage years as a pathetic lackey for the school's most notorious bully. It seems he hasn't changed a bit. He's still wearing the same expression of borrowed authority, bullying anyone he deems weaker than himself. He points a trembling finger at Jiang's mountain of supplies, demanding he put everything back or face the consequences for disrupting business. Jiang doesn't flinch. He looks at the man with a calm, predatory smile that makes Yang Tao's bravado falter for a split second. He mocks the manager, asking if this is how the establishment treats its most valuable customers. An hour later, the tension has moved to the front of the store, where a mountain of goods is being scanned at a frantic pace. The cashier's hands are shaking as she pulls a seemingly endless receipt from the machine. The final total flashes on the screen, 56,883 yuan. Yang Tao stands nearby, his arms crossed and a smug look on his face, waiting for the moment Jiang's card is declined so he can call the police. He's convinced Jiang is just a broke loser playing a desperate prank. Pay up right now, Yang Tao sneers, his voice loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear, or don't blame us for being rough when we kick you out. Jiang remains silent, his expression unreadable. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a sleek, matte black card with a silver chip. With a swift, fluid motion, he swipes it through the reader. A sharp, clear beep echoes through the lobby. Transaction successful. The color instantly drains from Yang Tao's face, leaving him looking like a ghost. He stares at the approved message on the screen, his mouth hanging open as he tries to process the fact that this loser just spent a year's salary on groceries without blinking. But Jiang isn't finished with him yet. As Yang Tao tries to slink away into the back office, Jiang's voice rings out like a whip. Hold on. He demands a public apology for the disrespect he was shown. Yang Tao tries to regain his footing, but the crowd has already turned. People have their phones out, the lenses of a dozen cameras focused on the manager's humiliated face. They're recording everything for TikTok, shouting for the manager to apologize to the big spender. Jiang leans in close, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous register that only Yang Tao can hear. He tells the man that if the apology is sincere enough, he'll buy 10 times as much right now. To prove his point, he flips his phone around, showing a bank balance of 700,000 yuan in his primary spending account. Yang Tao's knees actually buckle. He realizes he's just offended a man with more liquid cash than the store's daily revenue. Under the relentless gaze of the cameras, he bows so low his forehead nearly touches the floor, his voice cracking as he stammers out a desperate apology. Jiang places a firm hand on the back of the man's head, forcing him down an extra inch. Remember not to be so reckless in the future, Jiang says, his eyes cold and devoid of mercy. Leave some room for yourself, got it? Yang Tao is a shell of a man now, his arrogance completely evaporated. He follows Jiang through the warehouse like a beaten dog, his voice now high and eager to please. He asks what Jiang could possibly need with so many supplies, his mind already looking for a way to profit from the situation. Jiang brushes him off with a vague comment about a big deal, but Yang Tao's greed is piqued. He mentions that his old boss, the infamous school bully Zhang Xingxia, has moved into the wholesale business and has access to massive quantities of stock. He offers to set up a meeting, thinking this is his chance to get back into Jiang's good graces. Jiang smirks, a dark glint in his eyes. He remembers Zhang Xingxia all too well. The man was a monster in high school and even worse during the apocalypse. He knows exactly how much gray income these two have been stealing from the supermarket. He agrees to the meeting, his mind already weaving a trap for the man who once made his life a living hell. They drive to a desolate, industrial warehouse district on the far edge of the city, where the air is thick with the smell of rust and stagnant water. A black Mercedes-Benz screeches to a halt in front of them, kicking up a blinding cloud of grit and dust. A man steps out of the vehicle, exhaling a thick, pungent cloud of cigarette smoke that hangs in the still air. It's Zhang Xingzhe. He's dressed in a long, expensive tan coat that looks out of place in the grime of the district, his face set in a permanent mask of boredom and cruelty. He looks at Jiang with pure, unadulterated disdain, turning to Yang Tao and asking if this broke student is really the big client he was promised. He remembers Jiang as the quiet, easy target from their school days, and he clearly hasn't updated his mental file. He takes a long, slow drag of his cigarette, his eyes narrowing as he scans Jiang for any sign of wealth. Jiang steps forward and rudely grabs the drawstring of Jiang's hoodie, rubbing the fabric between his fingers with a mocking laugh. He sneers at the fake designer brand, claiming he can spot a poser from a mile away. He's furious at Yang Tao for wasting his time on a nobody and suddenly lashes out, shoving the manager aside with a brutal, one-handed strike that sends the man stumbling. He turns back to Jiang, his face inches away, his breath smelling of stale tobacco. He threatens Jiang, telling him that since he's wasted his time, he won't be allowed to leave the warehouse district standing unless he buys an entire truckload of goods. Jiang doesn't move an inch, his gaze steady and terrifyingly calm. He tells Jiang to take his hands off his collar and show him the account details if he wants to see real money. Jiang pulls out his phone and taps the screen with a casual flick of his thumb. A second later, Zhang's phone erupts with a loud notification ping. The bully's eyes widen to the size of saucers as he looks at the screen. 1 million yuan has been transferred as a non-refundable deposit. He nearly chokes on his cigarette, the smoke curling around his shocked face. Jiang tells him he's looking to buy 5 million worth of goods and wants the first truck loaded before the sun goes down. He lists off his requirements: rice, oil, salt, snacks, anything that can be eaten or drunk. Zhang's entire demeanor shifts in an instant. The predator becomes the servant, his voice dripping with a sickening, fake sincerity as he bows and invites Jiang inside to inspect the premium stock. Inside the cavernous warehouse, Zhang leads him to a massive, sprawling pile of boxes stacked nearly to the ceiling. He thinks he's found the ultimate sucker. He has a massive shipment of nearly expired food that he's been desperate to dump before it becomes a total loss. He offers it to Jiang with a measly 10% discount, acting as if he's doing him a massive favor. Jiang walks over to a stack and picks up a random bag of snacks, turning it over in his hand. He knows exactly what Jiang is trying to do. He calls the bully out on his shrewdness, pointing out that while the outermost layer of boxes looks fresh, everything hidden inside is days away from expiring. Zhang's fake smile falters, his eyes darting around the room, but Jiang continues with a chilling calmness. He offers to take the entire batch of expired goods, but only at a 50% discount. And there's one more catch: the final payment will be settled in exactly 1 month. Jiang hesitates, his greed battling his suspicion, but Jiang casually mentions mortgaging his luxury apartment as collateral. Jiang agrees, his mind already spending the money, convinced he's just fleeced a rich idiot for millions. Jiang stands alone among the towering, dusty stacks of boxes, his silhouette cast long against the concrete floor by the harsh overhead lights. He tells Jiang with a cryptic smile that he is the channel, and that this food will be worth more than gold in just a few days. Jiang just laughs, a loud, hollow sound that echoes through the warehouse, convinced Jiang has finally lost his mind. As Jiang walks away, his phone begins to vibrate in his pocket again. It's another buyer calling about the house. He smirks, the plan to sell the same property to multiple desperate people moving into its final, most lucrative phase. He leaves the warehouse district behind, Yang Tao and Zhang Xingzhe watching him go from the loading dock, both of them certain they've just made the deal of a lifetime at his expense. A few days later, Jiang stands at the center of his massive construction site in the East District, the air filled with the deafening roar of jackhammers and the rhythmic clanging of steel. The foreman, a man in a battered red hard hat, approaches him with a clipboard in hand. He reports that the fortress is now 70 to 80% complete. The walls have been reinforced with high-grade concrete, the blast-proof doors are being fitted into their frames, and the underground warehouse has been fully sanitized. Jiang checks his system interface. Zhang Xingzhe has delivered the goods as promised. The warehouse is now packed to the rafters with enough food to last a decade. The system pings with a triumphant ding. The mission, 10 years of sustenance, is complete. 20 points are added to his balance, bringing his total to 30. He feels a surge of power, a sense of security he hasn't known in 2 lifetimes. Jiang opens the system store once more, his eyes immediately locking onto a new, high-tier item, the Awakening Ability supply box. It costs 10 points, a significant investment, but he doesn't hesitate. He taps the purchase button, and a notification flashes across his vision, Mind's Eye Level 1. Suddenly, the world looks different. He can feel a new sense sharpening within him, a passive ability that allows him to detect the hidden hostility of anyone around him. It's a skill that will be worth more than any weapon when the world falls apart and trust becomes a death sentence. A new task appears on his screen, armed to the teeth. He needs weapons, and he needs them now. He smiles, his blue eyes glowing with a cold, predatory light. "This is exactly what I had in mind," he whispers to the wind. Late that night, Jiang finds himself navigating the neon-drenched shadows of the city's most dangerous black market. The air here is thick with the smell of cheap grease, stale tobacco, and the palpable scent of desperation. He moves through the crowded, narrow alleys, his mind's eye constantly scanning the faces of the thugs and dealers around him. Suddenly, he spots a familiar, bloated figure at a jewelry stall, Li Shuxiong, the man who would eventually become his executioner. In this timeline, Li is still just a corrupt businessman, currently haggling over a jade bracelet that Jiang's system identifies as cheap glass. Jiang watches from the shadows, a cold sense of irony washing over him as he sees Li pay 2,000 yuan for a worthless trinket. He thinks of Cui Jing and how she was fooled by a man who couldn't even spot a fake at a street stall. The revenge he has planned for them will be far more substantial than a simple scam. Jiang moves deeper into the market, his eyes searching for something far more lethal than jewelry. He eventually finds a stall tucked away in a dark corner, its table covered in a terrifying array of cold steel, machetes, serrated combat knives, and long, curved swords that glint dangerously under the dim lights. He picks up a heavy, well-balanced blade, feeling the cold weight of the steel in his palm. The stall owner, a man dressed in faded camouflage, watches him with a wary, narrowed gaze. Jiang asks if he has any hard stuff hidden away. The man scoffed, telling him to buy a sharpener and do the work himself if he wants a real edge. Jiang looks the man directly in the eye, his gaze so intense the owner visibly recoils. "Not hard enough," Jiang says, his voice a low growl. "I need something that can cut through bone like butter." The owner gets defensive, his hand moving toward a hidden club beneath the table, asking if Jiang is there to cause trouble. Jiang doesn't say a word. He pulls out his phone and, with a few quick taps, transfers 200,000 yuan directly to the man's account. The owner's phone dings, and as he looks at the screen, his entire face transforms. The hostility vanishes, replaced by a look of pure, greedy awe. He realizes he's dealing with a man of immense resources. He quickly calls out to his assistant to watch the stall, his voice now hushed and respectful as he beckons Jiang toward a heavy steel door in the back, ready to show him the true weapons of war. The dealer in the faded camouflage jacket turns his head, his voice cutting through the humid, heavy air of the black market as he calls out to his assistant, Xiaoxiang, to keep an eye on the front stall. He gestures with a rough, calloused hand, inviting Jiang Xiaoyong into the deeper, more secluded shadows of the building. The transition from the noisy, chaotic market to the quiet, dimly lit corridor is immediate, the air growing colder and smelling of old grease and cold steel. The dealer leads the way, his footsteps heavy on the concrete floor, while Jiang follows with a silent, predatory grace, his eyes scanning every corner for potential threats. They reach a heavy, reinforced door that groans on its hinges as it opens, revealing a cramped backroom filled with crates and the faint, acrid scent of gunpowder. The dealer turns back to Jiang, a sharp, eager glint in his eyes, sensing that this isn't just a casual buyer but someone with a very specific and dangerous purpose. He explains that talking outside is inconvenient for business of this nature, beckoning Jiang further into the belly of his operation. Inside the room, the walls are lined with shelves holding various boxes, and a single, low-hanging bulb casts long, flickering shadows across the floor. The dealer reaches into a heavy metal case and pulls out a crudely fashioned weapon, its surface rough and unpolished. He holds it up with a practiced ease, telling Jiang that they have homemade guns available, powerful enough to take down small game or provide basic protection. He quotes a price of 2,000 yuan, emphasizing that the ammunition is cheap, just simple gunpowder and steel balls. It's a weapon for the desperate, for those who need a deterrent but can't afford the real thing. Jiang stares at the crude piece of metal, his expression unreadable, his mind already calculating the lethality required for the coming apocalypse. He knows that against the horrors that are about to be unleashed, this homemade toy would be as useless as a toothpick. The dealer, seeing Jiang's lack of interest, quickly sets the homemade gun aside and reaches for a different case. He pulls out a sleek, silver replica revolver that catches the meager light, its polished surface reflecting the dealer's greedy smile. He boasts that its performance is almost identical to an active-duty handgun, firing 9mm bullets with lethal precision. He sets the price at 5,000 yuan and mentions that he can provide the bullets for 5 yuan each. He watches Jiang closely, waiting for a reaction, hoping to see the spark of desire that usually accompanies the sight of such a weapon. But Jiang remains cold, his gaze fixed on the revolver with a sense of profound disappointment. He speaks, his voice a low, dangerous growl that seems to vibrate in the small room, telling the dealer that this is simply not good enough. The dealer's smile falters, his brow furrowing as he tries to understand what this young man could possibly be looking for if a high-quality replica isn't sufficient. Jiang stands there, his arms crossed over his chest, his silhouette imposing against the backdrop of the weapon-filled room. He reminds the dealer that he has already prepaid 200,000 yuan, a staggering sum that should have bought him access to the real tools of war. He tells the man that selling him this kind of low-grade junk isn't fitting for the level of investment he's made. The dealer's eyes widen, a bead of sweat rolling down his temple as the weight of Jiang's words sinks in. He realizes he's not dealing with a student playing at being a tough guy, but a man with resources and a terrifyingly clear objective. He stammers, asking what prepayment Jiang is talking about, his confusion momentarily overriding his greed. Jiang's eyes glow with a cold, blue intensity as he stares the man down, his voice dropping even lower. He clarifies that the 200,000 was just a 10% down payment. He isn't here for a single revolver or a handful of homemade pipes, he is here to buy 2 million yuan worth of weapons. The dealer's jaw nearly hits the floor, his mind reeling at the sheer scale of the order. 2 million yuan is more than he usually sees in a year of black market trading. His entire demeanor shifts in an instant, the wary hostility vanishing and being replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated awe. He begins to rub his hands together, his voice now high and eager to please, asking Jiang what he does for a living to afford such a massive purchase. He wonders why someone with that kind of capital would come to a place like this for such a large order. Jiang doesn't blink, his face a mask of aristocratic boredom. He spins a lie with practiced ease, telling the man that he usually doesn't handle such trivial matters himself, that his subordinates are the ones who typically take care of procurement. But, he adds cryptically, there have been some changes recently that required his personal intervention. He tells the dealer not to ask too many questions and simply state whether or not he can handle an order of this magnitude. The dealer is practically vibrating with excitement now, his mind already spending the commission he'll make from this deal. He tells Jiang to wait a moment, his eyes darting toward the door as if checking for eavesdroppers. He leans in close, his voice a hushed whisper, telling Jiang that he can absolutely handle it. He instructs Jiang to write a detailed list of everything he needs and promises to provide an address for the exchange. He sets the time for midnight, the day after tomorrow, emphasizing that the transaction must be completed in total secrecy. He reminds Jiang with a greedy glint in his eye to bring the rest of the payment in cash. As they prepare to leave the back room, the dealer is falling over himself to be respectful, acting like a servant to a king. He warns Jiang to watch his step as they move back toward the main market area, his voice dripping with a sickening, fake sincerity. But as they step out into the neon-blurred alleyway, the atmosphere changes instantly. A large, bloated figure emerges from the shadows, his expensive suit looking out of place in the grime of the black market. It's Li Shuxiong, the man who, in another life, would have been Zhang's executioner. He stops dead in his tracks, his eyes narrowing as he recognizes the young man standing before him. He lets out a derisive snort, asking if this is really Xiaoyong, the quiet kid he remembered. He mocks Jiang for being at the black market, commenting on how he's heard rumors of Jiang spending money like water recently. He sneers, accusing Jiang of ignoring Cui Jing and acting like his family has suddenly come into some secret inheritance or heirlooms. He laughs, a harsh, grating sound, asking if Jiang watched too many marketing videos and decided to sell everything he owns just to live a life of temporary comfort. Jiang doesn't respond immediately. Instead, he decides this is the perfect moment to test his newly acquired mind's eye ability. He focuses his intent, and suddenly, the world shifts. A brilliant, ethereal blue-eye icon manifests in his vision, pulsing with a soft light. As he looks at Li Shuxiong, the system begins to process the man's emotions, translating his internal state into visible icons. Above Li's head, a series of red and purple icons appear, symbols of intense hostility, greed, and a deep-seated desire to cause harm. Jiang smirks, the ability working even better than he expected. He can see the man's true nature laid bare, the mask of a businessman stripped away to reveal the predator beneath. Jiang looks Li directly in the eye, his voice calm and cutting. He asks Li if he really thinks he tricked Cui Jing into bed with nothing but fakes and second-hand goods. He leans in, his smile turning predatory, and tells Li that he's right. Cui Jing is exactly like those fakes, second-hand and ultimately worthless. The insult hits Li like a physical blow, his face turning a deep, angry purple. He sputters, his fists clenching at his sides, unable to believe the audacity of the man he once considered a non-threat. He roars, asking what Jiang just said, his voice echoing off the brick walls of the alley. The dealer in the camouflage jacket, sensing the shift in power and wanting to protect his 2 million yuan client, steps forward. He looks at Jiang and asks if he knows this man. Jiang doesn't even look back, his gaze fixed on the fuming Li Shuxiong. He tells the dealer that he doesn't just know him, the man is an enemy. That's all the dealer needs to hear. He gives a sharp nod, telling Jiang to go ahead and leave, promising that he will teach this loudmouthed fool a proper lesson. Li Shuxiong tries to protest, but he is suddenly surrounded by the dealer's thugs, men who look like they've spent their lives fighting in the dirt. Li's bravado vanishes in an instant, replaced by a look of sheer terror as he realizes he's trapped. He tries to negotiate, his voice trembling as he tells the boss that they should just talk this out. But the dealer isn't interested in talking. He swings a heavy, blunt object with brutal efficiency, the sound of the impact sickeningly loud in the quiet alley. Li Shuxiong collapses to the ground, a cry of pain escaping his lips as he curls into a ball. He gasps for air, the dust of the alleyway coating his expensive clothes, his eyes filled with a mixture of agony and a burning, desperate rage. He wheezes out a threat, calling Jiang a bastard and telling him to just wait, promising that this isn't over. Jiang doesn't even turn around to witness the pathetic display. He walks away, his footsteps steady and rhythmic, the sounds of the beatdown fading behind him. 2 days pass in a blur of preparation and calculated moves. Jiang finds himself standing in a massive, industrial warehouse under the cover of night. The air is still and cold, the only sound being the distant hum of the city. A large transport truck is backed into the loading dock, its rear doors open to reveal a treasure trove of weaponry. Jiang checks his system interface, and a notification flashes before his eyes: mission, armed to the teeth completed. He feels a surge of satisfaction as 10 more system points are added to his balance, bringing his total to 20. He steps toward the open crates, his eyes taking in the sight of rows of assault rifles, their black matte finishes gleaming under the warehouse lights. There are pistols, crates of ammunition, and tactical gear, everything he needs to turn his fortress into an impregnable stronghold. Suddenly, another notification pings in his mind, a melodic ding that signals a bonus reward. The system informs him that he has been credited with a physical enhancement potion, +2. Jiang's eyes widen slightly. He knows from his previous life that a +2 potion is incredibly rare, far more potent than the standard versions found in the system store. He pulls the syringe from the air, the liquid inside glowing with a faint, ethereal light. He doesn't hesitate. He knows that in the world to come, physical strength will be the difference between life and death. He plunges the needle into his arm and depresses the plunger, sending the glowing serum into his bloodstream. The reaction is instantaneous and violent. A wave of white-hot pain erupts from the injection site, spreading through his body like liquid fire. He gasps, his teeth gritting together as he stumbles back against a stack of crates. Ugh, he groans, his muscles seizing and his veins bulging beneath his skin. It feels as if his very DNA is being rewritten, his bones thickening and his muscle fibers being knit together with superhuman density. He collapses to one knee, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his vision blurring as the potion works its magic. He thinks to himself that the average adult male has a physical strength rating of 5. By adding 2 points from this potion, he is looking at a 40% increase in raw power. And because this is a +2 version, it's twice as effective as the standard +1 potions available in the store, which cost 20 points each. He realizes he has just saved himself a massive amount of resources while gaining a significant advantage over any other survivors. As the pain finally begins to recede, replaced by a sense of boundless energy and strength, Jiang stands up. He feels lighter, faster, and more powerful than he ever did in his previous life. He checks his status, 8 physical points. He is now 60% stronger than the average human being. He looks around the warehouse, his eyes landing on a thick, rusted steel rebar leaning against a wall. He wants to test his new limits. He reaches out and grips the cold metal, his fingers sinking into the rust. With a sudden, explosive burst of strength, he flexes his arm. The heavy steel bar groans and shrieks as it begins to bend, the metal yielding to his will like it was made of soft lead. He twists it into a jagged U shape and tosses it aside, the heavy clatter echoing through the warehouse. Got it, he whispers, a dark, satisfied smile playing on his lips. He turns his attention back to the mountain of weapons. He knows he can't leave them here, they are too valuable to risk being discovered. He raises his hand, the dark metallic band of his space ring catching the light. With a thought, he activates the artifact. A shimmering distortion appears in the air, and one by one, the crates of rifles and ammunition are pulled into the void, disappearing into the timeless space of the ring. He knows these weapons won't take up much room in the 500 cubic meter interior, but he stores them carefully, ensuring they are easily accessible. He stands alone in the now empty warehouse, the silence returning. He looks out toward the city skyline, his mind racing. The day after tomorrow is the first day of the apocalypse. The world as he knows it is about to end, and he is finally ready. He asks himself if there is anything else he needs to do, any loose ends he needs to tie up before the blood begins to flow. His thoughts drift back to his apartment building and the people who live there. He remembers Grandpa Lee, the greedy neighbor who had been such a plague in his past life. In a sudden shift of memory or perhaps a final meeting, he sees the old man again. But this time, the fire is gone from the neighbor's eyes. Grandpa Lee looks old, frail, and desperate. He sighs, his voice cracking as he tells Jiang that his granddaughter needs to transfer schools and they urgently need the house for residency. He pleads with Jiang, telling him that he's been circling the area and Jiang's house is the only one for sale. He begs Jiang not to back out of the deal now. Jiang stares at the man, his blue eyes cold and devoid of the pity that once would have consumed him. He has experienced the apocalypse, He has seen the depths of human treachery and knows that in a few days, this old man's concerns about school districts will be a cruel joke. And yet, a small, lingering part of his humanity remains. He thinks to himself that even after everything, it's still hard to completely ignore the plight of others, no matter how much he might want to. He decides, in a moment of cold pragmatism disguised as mercy, that he will send some essential supplies to the old man once the chaos begins. He tells himself that he'll provide enough for them to survive the initial wave, but whether they can survive long-term will be entirely up to them. He views it not as an act of kindness, but as a final repayment for the 5 million yuan the old man provided, money that funded his entire apocalypse plan. He turns and walks away from the warehouse, his silhouette disappearing into the night, the sound of his footsteps the only warning of the storm that is about to overtake the world. He is no longer just a survivor, he is the architect of his own destiny, and the countdown to the end has finally reached its final hours. The air is thick with the scent of ozone and decay, a harbinger of the absolute chaos that is about to consume every corner of civilization. A sleek black car cuts through the silence of a narrow urban canyon, its tires crunching over the grit of a neglected alleyway. The driver maneuvers the vehicle with a sense of urgent precision, the engine's low hum echoing off the tiled walls of the surrounding apartment blocks. He glances at the dashboard, a small sigh of relief escaping his lips as he realizes he's reached his destination. He mutters a quiet word of thanks to the GPS, knowing that in a place this labyrinthine and tucked away, finding the right spot is half the battle. He steps out of the car, the shadow of the towering building swallowing him whole. He looks up at the weathered facade of the apartment complex, his gaze tracing the lines of the cheap, uniform tiles. He begins his ascent, his footsteps echoing in the hollow stairwell. As he climbs, his mind wanders to the man he's come to see, an old soul living on the fringes of society. He thinks about how the old man must be struggling, forced to rent the most affordable unit available, tucked away on the very top floor where the air is thin and the isolation is absolute. It's a place for those the world has forgotten, but for our protagonist, it's the most important coordinate on the map. He reaches the top landing and comes to a halt before a nondescript door. He doesn't knock immediately. Instead, he raises his hand, his eyes locking onto a peculiar ring adorning his finger. A faint, ethereal glow begins to emanate from the jewel, and suddenly, the air in the hallway begins to shimmer and distort. With a sharp, digital crackle, pixelated blocks of light manifest out of thin air, rapidly coalescing into solid forms. Within seconds, the cramped hallway is filled with stacks of heavy cardboard boxes, appearing as if by magic. The sheer impossibility of the sight would drive a normal person to madness, but for him, it's just a necessary preparation. He finally brings his fist to the door, the sound of his knock sharp and demanding. Inside, the sound of shuffling feet approaches. A voice, weary and laced with a hint of desperation, calls out that they're coming. The door creaks open, revealing an elderly man with a thin beard and eyes clouded by the weight of 1,000 worries. He immediately begins to stammer an apology, his voice trembling as he promises to have the rent money by next week. He looks like a man who has spent his life being crushed by the gears of society, expecting nothing but another blow. But as his eyes adjust to the light, his expression shifts from fear to utter bewilderment. He recognizes the young man standing before him, but the presence of the massive pile of supplies in the hallway makes no sense. He gasps out the name Mr. Jiang, his mouth hanging open in shock. The protagonist doesn't waste time with pleasantries. He steps into the frame of the doorway, his presence commanding and intense. He tells the old man that explanations will have to wait, but for now, they need to move every single one of these boxes inside. He emphasizes the need for speed, his eyes darting toward the stairs, warning that they must finish before any curious neighbors catch a glimpse of this impossible haul. The old man, still reeling from the shock, can only nod and begin to help, his frail frame straining against the weight of the boxes. They work in a feverish silence, the only sound being the heavy thud of cardboard on the apartment floor. Once the final box is inside and the door is firmly shut, the old man stands in the center of his living room, surrounded by a mountain of supplies. He looks at the protagonist with a mixture of awe and exhaustion, remarking on the incredible energy of the youth today, moving so much weight without even pausing to catch his breath. The protagonist ignores the compliment, his eyes scanning the room with a tactical coldness. He paces the perimeter, his boots clicking on the hard floor. He examines the walls and then turns his attention to the front door, testing its weight and the strength of its frame. He mutters to himself that the room is decent enough and the door is solid, a small but vital detail in the plan forming in his mind. He turns back to the old man, his expression hardening into something deadly serious. He tells the old man to listen carefully to every word he is about to say, his voice dropping to a low, authoritative tone that brooks no interruption. He gestures to the mountain of boxes, explaining that if used wisely, these supplies should sustain them for at least 6 months. Then, he delivers the chilling prophecy: starting tomorrow, the world as they know it will cease to exist. The old man stares at him, his face pale, unable to process the magnitude of the warning. The protagonist's gaze drifts to a framed photograph resting on a side table. It shows the old man standing proudly beside a young girl with a bright, innocent smile. He asks if the girl's name is Meng Shanshan. The old man is taken aback, his brow furrowing in confusion as he wonders how this stranger could possibly know his granddaughter's name when he's certain he never mentioned it. He asks where she is now, his voice tight with a sudden, protective instinct. The old man explains that she is currently at school, and that once the paperwork for their house transfer is complete, he plans to move her to a new school closer to their new home. As the old man speaks of mundane things like paperwork and school registrations, a dark cloud of memory washes over the protagonist. He sees a vision of a different timeline, a world of ash and blood. He remembers Shanshan in his previous life, her face streaked with tears and grime as she sat amidst the ruins of a fallen city. He recalls her telling him how her grandfather had risked everything, breaking into her overrun high school to save her, only to lose his life in the process. The regret in her voice had been a physical weight, a haunting melody of what-ifs. The protagonist's eyes burn with a fierce, renewed purpose. He looks at the photo again, his resolve hardening like tempered steel. He vows to himself that in this life, he will make up for that tragedy. He will not let history repeat itself. He turns back to the old man, his voice sharp and decisive. He tells him flatly that they won't be moving into his house anymore. The old man is stunned, beginning to protest, fearing that the deal is falling through. But the protagonist cuts him off, his words hitting like hammer blows. He tells him to let him finish. He repeats that starting tomorrow, the world will transform into a living hell. In that new reality, things like house deeds and school registrations will be utterly worthless. They are nothing but ghosts of a dead world. He reaches out and grips the old man's shoulder, his touch firm and grounding. He commands the old man to come with him immediately to Shanshan's school. They need to pick her up now, before the clock runs out. He promises to arrange a new, safe place for both of them, a sanctuary against the coming storm. The old man looks at him with wide, uncomprehending eyes, stammering that he doesn't understand a single word of this madness. The protagonist feels a flash of frustration. He realizes the old man is too rooted in the old world to grasp the horror of the new one. He searches for a way to explain the inexplicable. He asks the old man if he knows what a famine is. The old man nods slowly, the word carrying a primal weight even in peaceful times. The protagonist leans in, his voice a grim whisper, asking the man to imagine the terror and tragedy of such a time. The old man admits he can imagine it, but he struggles to see how such a thing could happen now, in an era of abundance. Suddenly, the protagonist raises his hand again, the ring flashing with a blinding light. In an instant, the mountain of boxes in the living room vanishes, leaving the floor bare. The old man stumbles back, his heart racing as he asks what kind of magic this is. The protagonist stands tall, bathed in a flickering blue aura of power, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. He declares that he possesses superpowers and the ability to foresee the future. He tells the old man that if he wants to survive, and more importantly, if he wants Shanshan to survive, he must do exactly as he is told from this moment forward. The sheer weight of his presence silences any further doubt. He demands to know the location of Shanshan's school, his gaze piercing and relentless. They rush back to the car, the engine roaring to life as they speed toward the educational institution. The sun is beginning to set, casting long, bloody shadows across the city streets, a silent countdown to the end of days. They arrive at the school just as the final bell is echoing through the courtyard. But the scene greeting them is far from academic. In a secluded corner of the grounds, a group of girls has cornered Shanshan. The air is thick with the cruel laughter of bullies. A girl in a black tank top, her face twisted in a sneer of arrogance, mocks Shanshan, demanding to know what she has that a boy named Zhang Xiaocheng could possibly like. She reaches out and delivers a sharp, stinging slap to Shanshan's face, the sound echoing off the brick walls. Shanshan cowers, her eyes welling with tears, her voice trembling as she tries to explain that she doesn't want to be with him and that he's the one who won't leave her alone. The bully isn't interested in the truth. She snarls, asking if Shanshan is making excuses, and then, with a brutal lack of hesitation, she delivers a heavy kick to Shanshan's stomach. Shanshan collapses to the ground, gasping for air. The bully's friends join in, their faces masks of petty malice. One of them grabs Shanshan by her long hair, yanking her head back with a vicious force that brings a scream of pain to her lips. They mock her further, their insults cutting deeper than any physical blow. Suddenly, the sound of running footsteps interrupts their cruel sport. The old man bursts into the courtyard, his face pale with terror and rage. He screams for them to stop, his voice cracking as he demands they let go of his granddaughter. He berates them, asking if their parents ever taught them any manners, his heart breaking at the sight of Shanshan's suffering. The bullies don't look ashamed, they look amused. The girl in the black tank top sneers at him, calling him a useless old fart and telling him to stay out of business that doesn't concern him. She signals to a group of boys standing nearby, thugs in training who have been watching the scene with dull, predatory eyes. One of the boys, a tall youth with a cruel glint in his eyes, steps forward, hefting a heavy baseball bat. He mocks the old man, calling him an old bastard and telling him to let go of the girl. He swings the bat with a casual, terrifying strength, the wood whistling through the air as it aims for the old man's head. But the blow never lands. A hand, moving with a speed that defies the human eye, reaches out and catches the bat mid-swing. The impact creates a dull thud, but the protagonist's arm doesn't even tremble. He looks at the young thug with a gaze that is colder than the void between stars. He remarks with a chilling calm that they're learning to be thugs at a very young age. The boy with the bat is stunned, his bravado vanishing in an instant as he realizes he's facing something he can't comprehend. He stammers, wondering where this poor old fool came from, but his words die in his throat as the protagonist's grip on the bat tightens. The other thugs, sensing a threat, begin to close in. They whisper to each other, wondering if this newcomer has some kind of special training. They decide to take him on together, their numbers giving them a false sense of security. The protagonist's eyes narrow, a predatory smile playing across his lips. He thinks to himself that after enhancing his physical abilities, even his reactions have reached a level far beyond any normal human. One of the thugs lunges forward, a knife glinting in his hand. The protagonist moves with the grace of a shadow, a simple, fluid motion that sends the attacker crashing to the ground. He doesn't just fight, he dismantles them. He delivers a series of lightning-fast strikes, each one calculated to incapacitate. He kicks one boy with such force that he's sent sprawling across the pavement, his breath leaving him in a ragged gasp. Another thug tries to swing a weapon, but the protagonist is already behind him, a hand gripping the back of his neck with the strength of a vice. He slams the boy's face into the ground, the sound of the impact sickeningly final. The courtyard, once a place of petty bullying, has become a masterclass in absolute dominance. The remaining thugs watch in horror as their friends are systematically taken down. They realize too late that they haven't just picked a fight, they've invited a hurricane. The protagonist turns his attention back to the lead bully, the girl in the black tank top who started this whole nightmare. She's frozen in place, her arrogance replaced by a paralyzing, primal fear. He walks toward her, his footsteps slow and deliberate. She stammers, asking what he wants to do, her voice a thin, pathetic whimper. He doesn't answer with words. He reaches out and grabs her by the hair, the same way she had grabbed Shanshan. He yanks her head back, forcing her to look into his glowing, merciless eyes. He asks her if she likes pulling hair, his voice a low, dangerous growl. She screams for him to let go, her body trembling with terror. He ignores her pleas. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a sharp, tactical knife. The blade catches the fading light, a sliver of cold steel that promises nothing but pain. The girl's eyes go wide, her breath coming in short, jagged gasps as she asks what he's going to do with the knife. With a swift, practiced motion, he brings the blade down. But he doesn't strike her flesh. Instead, he shears through her long, dark hair, the locks falling to the ground like dead leaves. He tells her with a chilling logic that in the world that is coming, long hair will be nothing but a burden. It will be a handle for the monsters to grab, a tether to a gruesome death. He tells her that short hair might just save her life, though his tone suggests he doesn't particularly care if it does. He releases her, and she collapses to her knees, clutching her ruined hair and sobbing in a mixture of humiliation and relief. The protagonist turns back to Shanshan and the old man, his expression softening only slightly. He tells Shanshan it's time to go. She looks at him, her eyes wide with shock and a burgeoning sense of awe. She asks where they are going, her voice barely a whisper. He doesn't answer immediately, instead leading them back to the car. As they pull away from the school, the city lights begin to flicker, a sign of the failing infrastructure that will soon be a permanent feature of their lives. Inside the car, the silence is heavy. Shanshan sits in the back with her grandfather, her hands still shaking. She looks at the protagonist, who is focused on the road, his profile silhouetted against the passing streetlights. She asks him who he is, her voice filled with a desperate need for some kind of anchor in this rapidly shifting reality. He glances at her in the rearview mirror, a small, enigmatic smile touching his lips. He tells her his name is Jiang Xiaoyong and that from now on, she can call him Brother Xiaoyong. He thanks her for standing up to the bullies, his words a rare moment of genuine acknowledgement. He tells her not to worry about those people anymore, remarking with a grim certainty that they likely don't have many days left in this world. Shanshan's brow furrows as she asks what he means. She asks if there is really going to be a famine, her mind clinging to the simpler explanation he gave her grandfather. He admits that he made up the famine story to make it easier for the old man to understand, but the truth is far more terrifying. He tells her that what is really coming is the apocalypse. Shanshan gasps, the word echoing in the cramped space of the car. She looks at her phone, her fingers flying across the screen as she searches for news. She finds a series of short videos and news reports, her eyes widening as she watches footage of chaotic scenes in distant cities. People are screaming, running in terror from others who are moving with a jerky, unnatural gait. The reports mention a sudden outbreak of rabies, but the images tell a different story. She sees people biting each other with a feral intensity, their eyes clouded and their skin a sickly, ashen gray. She reads comments about a strange smog that has begun to blanket certain provinces, a mist that carries a foul, metallic scent. The protagonist confirms her fears, explaining that the signs are already appearing. He tells her that tomorrow marks the first day of the end. A toxic smog will blanket the region, and a significant portion of the population will mutate into zombies. He describes the process with a clinical detachment, explaining that once they die, they will become one of them. He asks her if she knows what zombies are, and she nods, her face pale with the realization that the horror movies of her youth are becoming a living nightmare. He tells her that when it all starts happening tomorrow, she won't find it so unbelievable anymore. Suddenly, the car comes to a grinding halt. They've hit a massive traffic jam, a sea of red taillights stretching as far as the eye can see. The protagonist curses under his breath, his eyes scanning the gridlock for an opening. The emergency lane is blocked as well, filled with desperate drivers trying to bypass the chaos. The old man expresses his concern, wondering what will happen if the zombies catch up to them while they're stuck here. The protagonist tells him not to worry, that it's not that urgent yet, but his mind is already racing, calculating their next move. He thinks to himself that while the outbreak won't be total for a few days, a small-scale event right here could be disastrous. A sleek Mercedes-Benz tries to force its way into their lane, the driver honking aggressively. The protagonist's eyes flash with a sudden, dangerous light. He's spent his previous life being pushed around, but in this life, he refuses to tolerate such arrogance. He mutters that in the past he might have let it slide, but with the apocalypse looming, there's no need to tolerate scum like this. The driver of the Mercedes, a wealthy-looking man in a sharp suit, rolls down his window and begins to scream insults, his face red with road rage. The old man pleads with the protagonist to avoid trouble, noting that the other man looks powerful and wealthy. The protagonist ignores him, his grip on the steering wheel tightening. He tells the old man that if the guy dares to step out of his car, he won't mind sending him on his way early. The Mercedes driver continues his aggressive maneuvering, trying to wedge his car in front of theirs. The protagonist waits for the perfect moment, his eyes locked on the other vehicle. Then, with a sudden, violent jerk of the wheel, he rams his car into the side of the Mercedes. The sound of crunching metal and shattering glass fills the air. The Mercedes is sent spinning toward the edge of the road, its sleek frame crumpled like paper. The driver is left dazed and screaming, his sense of entitlement shattered along with his windshield. The protagonist doesn't stop to check on him. He maneuvers his car through the opening he's created, leaving the wreckage behind. The rich man scrambles out of his car, fuming with rage as he pulls out his phone, screaming into it about traffic police and surveillance footage. He vows to show the protagonist that there are some people you just can't mess with. But as he stands on the side of the road, shaking his fist at the receding taillights, he has no idea that the world he's trying to summon help from is already dead. The protagonist drives through the night, the city falling silent behind them. They eventually reach a secure, industrial-looking garage, the heavy metal door sliding shut with a final, echoing clang. He leads Shanshan and the old man inside, the space filled with the supplies he manifested earlier. He tells them to get some rest, his voice weary but resolute. He warns them that starting tomorrow, every single day will be a fight for survival. He watches them settle in, his mind already turning to the challenges of the coming dawn. The next morning, the sun rises over a world that has changed forever. The protagonist stands by a large window, looking out over a landscape that is still deceptively peaceful. The morning sun filters through the windows of a high-rise apartment, casting long shadows across the floor as a young girl stretches her arms wide, a look of pure contentment on her face. Meng Shanshan lets out a long, satisfied yawn, her voice filled with the simple joy of a teenager who has finally managed to escape the grueling cycle of early morning classes. She mutters to herself about how long it's been since she's had a truly good sleep, relishing the newfound freedom that this strange, fortified sanctuary provides. Just down the hallway, the protagonist, Jiang Xiaoyong, walks with a calm but purposeful stride, his expression unreadable as he approaches the two people he has vowed to protect in this new life. He catches Shanshan's eye and offers a small, knowing smirk, his presence alone commanding the room. He tells her that since she's finally up, it's time for them to see the true scale of what he has built. He turns to both Shanshan and her grandfather, his voice dropping to a serious, authoritative tone as he invites them to take a proper look at their new home, or as he calls it, their fortress. They begin to walk through the corridors, the sound of their footsteps echoing against the cold, industrial surfaces. Xiaoyong gestures toward the thick, imposing walls that surround them, explaining with a tactical coldness that these aren't just standard partitions. These walls are constructed from high-grade reinforced concrete, designed to withstand pressures that would crumble a normal building. As they move deeper into the facility, the sheer scale of the construction becomes apparent. They stand in a massive, open atrium, the ceiling soaring high above them, illuminated by rows of bright, recessed lights. Xiaoyong points toward the entrance, where a set of heavy, remote-controlled gates stands guard. He explains that the gates are made of solid steel, 3 centimeters thick, a barrier so formidable that neither desperate people nor the coming tide of zombies will be able to break through without the use of heavy weaponry. He stops and turns to face them, his blue eyes glowing with a faint, otherworldly intensity that makes Shanshan shiver. He delivers a stern warning, his voice leaving no room for argument. Without his explicit permission, no one other than the 3 of them is ever allowed inside this fortress. Shanshan looks at him, her brow furrowed with a mix of confusion and moral conflict. She asks him a question that has clearly been weighing on her mind. If other survivors manage to escape the chaos and find their way here, are they really just supposed to leave them outside to die? Xiaoyong doesn't flinch at the question, his gaze remaining fixed and icy. He tells her simply to come with him, leading them toward a different section of the facility. As they walk, his internal monologue reveals a much darker perspective. He knows that in the apocalypse, human nature becomes a volatile and unpredictable thing. He understands that the evil hidden in people's hearts will be magnified by desperation, and that having a bleeding heart in a world of monsters is a luxury that will only get them killed. They reach an elevated walkway that overlooks a vast, fenced-in courtyard filled with shipping containers and industrial equipment. Xiaoyong gestures to the area below, explaining that this is the buffer zone. If he isn't around and survivors come seeking help, this area can provide them with temporary shelter without compromising the integrity of the main fortress. He turns back to Shanshan, his expression hardening again as he demands to know if she understands the necessity of these rules. He emphasizes that until he returns from his next task, they must never, under any circumstances, let anyone inside the inner sanctum. Shanshan, cowed by the intensity of his gaze, can only nod and whisper that she understands. Xiaoyong's demeanor softens just a fraction as he tells them he will show them the food storage next, explaining how the supplies will be rationed out to ensure their long-term survival. They enter a massive warehouse space, the shelves stacked high with crates and boxes that seem to stretch on forever. Xiaoyong stands in the center of the room, a sense of grim satisfaction washing over him as he realizes that his preparations are finally complete. Suddenly, a strange, ethereal light begins to flicker around his eyes. He activates a unique ability, the mind's eye. As he looks at Shanshan and her grandfather, 2 glowing green icons appear above their heads, shaped like smiling faces. He notes to himself with a sense of relief that this is a sign of absolute trust, the first time such a marker has appeared in this life. He knows that in the world to come, trust is a currency more valuable than gold. He turns his attention back to the physical world, declaring that while food is essential, weapons are the most important thing for surviving the apocalypse. He raises his hand, and the peculiar ring on his finger begins to glow with a brilliant, golden light. With a sharp, digital crackle, the air in front of him begins to distort, pixelated blocks of light manifesting and coalescing into solid forms. Within seconds, a heavy crate appears on the floor, filled with a variety of lethal equipment. He reaches into the crate and pulls out a high-tech crossbow and a rugged shotgun, handing them to his companions. He tells them with a chilling seriousness that they must ensure these weapons stay under their control and never fall into the hands of anyone else. The grandfather grips the shotgun, his hands trembling slightly as he promises that he will guard them with his life. Just as the tension in the room reaches its peak, a sharp, digital chime echoes in Xiaoyong's mind. A translucent blue window flashes open in his field of vision, a system task. The notification informs him that by reuniting with Meng Shanshan, he has activated a new series of tasks titled Former Comrades. The first volume of this task requires him to find and rescue a man named Zhang Qi, offering a reward of 20 points. Xiaoyong's eyes narrow as he processes the information. He thinks to himself that this is a perfect opportunity, as he was already wondering how he would track down his old allies from his previous life. He looks out the large windows of the fortress, seeing a massive blue arrow projected into the sky by the system, pointing toward a distant part of the city. He turns back to his companions, his voice sharp and decisive as he tells them to remember everything he just said and to not violate a single rule. Shanshan asks him where he is going, her voice laced with a sudden spike of anxiety. He doesn't look back as he heads for the garage, simply stating that he needs to go and build up their team. He climbs into his sleek black car, the engine roaring to life with a powerful, predatory growl. He speeds out of the fortress, the tires screeching against the pavement as he follows the system's waypoint. The scene shifts to a vibrant, purple-lit building in the heart of the city, a KTV karaoke bar. Inside one of the private rooms, the atmosphere is thick with the smell of alcohol and the sound of off-key singing. A group of young men are celebrating, their faces flushed with drink. One of them, a silver-haired youth named Zhang Qi, is being urged by his friend to give him a hug if he needs to cry, the group laughing and joking in the way only college students can. The table in front of them is cluttered with beer bottles, snacks, and a half-eaten birthday cake. Zhang Qi stands up, stumbling slightly as he announces he needs to head to the restroom. His friend mocks him, asking if he's waiting on someone or if he just has a weak bladder. Zhang Qi flips him off with a grin and heads for the door. As he and his friend step out into the hallway, they accidentally bump into a woman in a red dress who is walking with a tall, aggressive-looking man in a suit. The man, whose face is scarred and twisted in a permanent sneer, immediately explodes in rage. Zhang Qi tries to apologize, his voice frantic as he says it was his mistake, but the man isn't interested in excuses. He calls Zhang Qi a little punk and asks if he even knows how to watch where he's going. Before Zhang Qi can react, the man delivers a brutal, lightning-fast kick to his stomach. The force of the blow sends Zhang Qi flying backward, his body slamming into the wall with a sickening thud. He collapses to the floor, gasping for air as his friend rushes to his side, asking if he's okay. The friend turns to the man in the suit, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and indignation as he asks why he would hit someone over a simple accident. The man in the suit, whose name is revealed to be Chen Chong, looks down at them with utter contempt. He remarks that this is the first time anyone has dared to talk back to him, his eyes flashing with a dangerous, predatory light. He reaches down and grabs Zhang Qi's friend by the collar, hoisting him off the ground with terrifying ease. The friend pleads with him to stop, promising that it was all their fault and begging him not to hit them anymore. Suddenly, a server from the KTV rushes into the hallway, his face pale as he tries to de-escalate the situation. He begs the gentleman to calm down, his voice cracking with desperation. Chen Chong ignores him, his grip tightening on the young man's shirt. He snarls at the server, asking if he knows who he is and declaring that even the server's boss wouldn't dare to touch his clothes. He demands that the server call his boss out immediately, vowing to make sure this entire karaoke bar is shut down by the end of the night. Zhang Qi and his friend, realizing they are completely outmatched, scramble back into their private room, their breath coming in ragged gasps. Their other friends inside the room are stunned, one of them standing up and demanding to know why they didn't fight back. He boasts that their mechanical engineering class has never backed down from a fight and offers to call in the rest of the department to take the guy down. Zhang Qi, still clutching his stomach, tells them to forget it, noting that they only have a year left until graduation and shouldn't go looking for trouble. He tries to put on a brave face, telling everyone to keep the music playing and to keep dancing. But the peace is short-lived. The door to the private room is kicked open with a violent crash, and Chen Chong walks in, flanked by several of his thugs. The music cuts out, replaced by a heavy, suffocating silence. Zhang Qi and his friends freeze, their eyes wide with terror as they realize the nightmare isn't over. Chen Chong looks around the room, a cruel smile playing across his lips. He points a finger at Zhang Qi and his friend, confirming to his companions that these are the ones who disrespected him. He barks an order to his thugs to grab them. The thugs move in, their faces masks of petty malice. They force Zhang Qi and his friends to their knees, making them clasp their hands behind their heads in a humiliating display of submission. One of the thugs, a man with a sickly, pale complexion and bloodshot eyes, stands over them, his body trembling with a strange, unnatural energy. He mocks them, asking if they still won't back down. Suddenly, the sickly thug lets out a low, guttural groan, a sound that is more animal than human. He collapses to the floor, his limbs twitching violently as if he's having a seizure. His friends look down at him in confusion, one of them asking what's wrong and wondering if his cold is getting worse. But the man on the floor isn't just sick. His eyes roll back in his head, and a thick, foul-smelling foam begins to leak from his mouth. He lets out a terrifying, bone-chilling roar and lunges forward with a speed that defies logic. He grabs one of the other thugs and sinks his teeth into the man's shoulder, the sound of tearing flesh echoing through the room. The victim screams in agony, pleading for someone to help him as he tries to shake off his attacker. The room erupts into absolute chaos. People are screaming, scrambling over furniture to get away from the carnage. In the midst of the madness, the door to the room opens again, and Jiang Xiaoyong walks in. He takes in the scene with a clinical detachment, his eyes locking onto the mutated thug who is now pinning another man to the floor. Xiaoyong moves with the grace of a shadow, appearing behind the zombie in an instant. He reaches out and grips the creature by the back of the neck, his hand moving with the strength of a vice. With a single, fluid motion, he slams the zombie's head into the wall, the impact shattering the plaster and sending cracked spiderwebbing across the surface. The zombie is pinned firmly in place, its limbs flailing uselessly. The remaining human thugs are frozen in shock, unable to comprehend the level of power they are witnessing. One of them stammers, asking who the hell Xiaoyong is. Xiaoyong ignores him, his gaze turning toward Zhang Qi. He asks his old comrade if he was bitten during the struggle. Zhang Qi, still reeling from the shock, manages to stammer out that he wasn't, his eyes wide with awe and confusion. Xiaoyong nods, his expression hardening as he looks back at the pinned zombie. He remarks with a chilling logic that judging by the creature's behavior, it was likely already infected, and since the other man was bitten so close to his head, he will likely mutate very soon. He turns his attention to the human thugs who are still standing, his eyes glowing with a cold, merciless light. He asks Zhang Qi to tell him which of these people need to be taken out. The lead thug, Chen Chong, tries to regain his bravado, telling Xiaoyong that he's getting a bit too cocky. He lunges forward, swinging a heavy fist at Xiaoyong's face. But Xiaoyong doesn't even blink. He catches the punch mid-air, the sound of the impact a dull thud. He looks at Chen Chong with a gaze that is colder than the void, his grip on the man's fist tightening until the sound of grinding bone fills the air. Chen Chong screams in pain, his arrogance vanishing in an instant. Xiaoyong delivers a devastating counterstrike, a single punch that sends Chen Chong crashing into a stack of speakers, his body limp and broken. He looks around the room, asking if anyone else isn't convinced and wants to try his fists. The remaining thugs back away, their faces pale with terror. Xiaoyong turns back to Zhang Qi, his voice dropping to a low, urgent tone. He tells his friend to take his other companion and wait for him outside the private room. Zhang Qi, sensing the absolute authority in Xiaoyong's voice, can only nod and scramble toward the exit, helping his injured friend along. As they leave, the man who was bitten by the zombie begins to twitch on the floor, his eyes turning a milky, sightless white. He lets out a roar of his own and lunges at his former friends. Xiaoyong watches the scene for a moment, a grim smile touching his lips. He mutters to himself that it's a good thing zombies haven't figured out how to open doors yet. He steps out of the room and slams the door shut, the sound of the heavy latch clicking into place echoing through the hallway. He turns to a group of KTV staff who have gathered nearby, their faces masks of confusion and fear. He tells them with a sharp, commanding tone to lock this door completely and to not let anyone inside under any circumstances. He instructs them to call the police and the hospital immediately, telling them that there is a patient with a highly contagious rabid flu inside the room. The staff members look at each other, one of them stammering the words rabid flu, as if trying to process a foreign language. Xiaoyong barks at them to just do it, his intensity finally spurring them into action. One of the staff members pulls out a key and locks the door, his hands shaking so much he can barely fit the metal into the slot. From inside the room, the sounds of screaming and tearing flesh continue, followed by a series of heavy thuds against the door. Chen Chong's voice can be heard from the other side, muffled but filled with a primal, desperate terror as he begs for someone to open the door and save him. But the door remains shut. Xiaoyong leads Zhang Qi and the others away, his mind already turning to the next phase of his plan. He knows that this is just the beginning, a small-scale preview of the nightmare that is about to consume the entire world. As they walk through the lobby, they pass a security room where several guards are staring at a bank of monitors. The screens show live surveillance footage from the private room they just left. The guards are frozen in horror, their mouths hanging open as they watch the carnage unfolding on the screens. They see the zombies tearing into the remaining humans, the once vibrant room now a scene of absolute slaughter. One of the guards whispers that they need to report this, his voice trembling with a realization that the world he knew is already dead. The neon lights of the city flicker with an eerie, dying glow as a group of panicked students huddles at the top of the stairs, their faces pale with a terror they can barely comprehend. Below them, standing by the open door of a sleek vehicle, Jiang Xiaoyong gestures with a sharp, commanding urgency that cuts through the chaotic noise of the night. He bellows at them to move, his voice a whip crack of authority, warning them that this place is no longer safe and that the shadows behind them are closing in. The students scramble down the steps, their footsteps heavy and uncoordinated, driven by the raw instinct to survive as they flee the carnage they just witnessed inside the KTV. Jiang doesn't wait for them to settle, his eyes are already fixed on the road ahead, his mind calculating the narrow window of escape they have left. The car door slams shut with a heavy, final thud, and the engine roars to life, a predatory growl that promises a swift exit from this nightmare. Tires screech against the asphalt, leaving charred rubber behind as the vehicle lunges forward, a streak of dark metal cutting through the oppressive gloom of the city streets. The headlights pierce the darkness, illuminating the empty pavement for only a fraction of a second before the car swallows the distance, leaving the haunted building far in the rearview mirror. Inside the cramped cabin, the air is thick with the smell of cold sweat and the sound of ragged, uneven breathing. Zhang Qi, his silver hair disheveled and his eyes wide with shock, leans forward from the back seat, his hands trembling as he grips the headrest. He looks at the back of Zhang's head, his voice trembling as he offers a desperate word of thanks, his mind reeling from the fact that a complete stranger just pulled them out of the jaws of death. He asks the question that's burning in all their minds, his voice a fragile whisper. Who is this man, and why did he risk everything to save them? Jiang doesn't turn his head, his gaze remains locked on the road, his hands steady on the steering wheel as if he's done this 1,000 times before. He introduces himself with a cold, clinical detachment, stating his name is Jiang Xiaoyong and that he was simply hired to ensure their safety. He makes it clear that the identity of his employer is irrelevant, his tone suggesting that in the world they are entering, names and reasons matter far less than the simple fact of staying alive. Zhang Qi sinks back into his seat, his brow furrowed as he tries to process the absurdity of the situation. He brings up the rabid flu that Jiang mentioned earlier, his voice laced with a desperate kind of skepticism as he mentions how the internet had already debunked the rumors, calling it nothing more than a hoax. He looks out the window at the passing blur of the city, wondering aloud if the horrific violence they just saw in the private room was some kind of elaborate illusion or a nightmare they haven't woken up from yet. Beside him, another friend, his glasses sliding down his nose from the humidity in the car, leans in with a look of pure desperation. He asks if there's any medicine, any cure for this madness, his voice cracking as he searches Zhang's reflection in the mirror for even a shred of hope. Zhang's eyes meet theirs in the rearview mirror, his expression as cold and unyielding as stone. He tells them with a chilling finality that this disaster isn't going away and that it will only get worse from here on out. He declares that the world they knew is already dead and that they are now living in the end times, a reality where the rules of the past no longer apply. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierces the interior of the car, followed by a violent, metallic crash that sends a jolt of adrenaline through everyone's veins. Zhang's eyes narrow as he grips the wheel tighter, his instinct screaming of an immediate threat. A shadow lunges from the darkness, a distorted, human-like shape slamming onto the hood of the car with a sickening thud. The creature's face is pressed against the windshield, its eyes milky and sightless, its jaw unhinged in a silent, terrifying roar. The students in the back erupt into screams of pure, unadulterated horror, their hands flying to their faces as they witness the monster clawing at the glass. One of them shrieks that it's the flu, the rabid flu, the realization finally sinking in that the hoax is very real and very hungry. Jiang remains the eye of the storm, his face a mask of grim determination as he maneuvers the vehicle through the chaos. He explains with a tactical coldness that what they are seeing is just a localized outbreak and that most of the population is still in the incubation period, unaware that they are carrying their own destruction inside them. He warns them that it won't be long before the entire city spirals out of control on a massive scale, and if they have any hope of seeing tomorrow, they must follow his orders without question. Zhang Qi, looking at the man who seems to have predicted the apocalypse, can only nod in a daze, his voice a hollow echo as he calls Jiang Brother Yong, surrendering his will to the only person who seems to know how to survive. As the car speeds through the night, a translucent blue window flickers into existence in Zhang's field of vision, a digital notification that only he can see. The system chimes with a sharp, electronic ring, announcing that the mission to rescue his former partner has been completed and that 20 points have been credited to his account. Zhang's eyes scan the text, a flicker of satisfaction crossing his face as he realizes his preparations are yielding results. He thinks to himself that it's time to see what new tools the system store has to offer, his mind already moving 3 steps ahead of the current crisis. The store interface expands, showing a list of supply boxes, one for post-apocalyptic cultivation, one for essential nutrients like sugar and oil, and another for armed deterrence. Jiang notes that the cultivation box is still available, and he realizes he needs to either buy it now or spend precious points to refresh the list later. He decides that every resource is vital and that since they will be back at the fortress soon, he will redeem every single one of them to bolster their defenses. He looks back at Zhang Qi through the mirror, his thoughts turning dark as he contemplates the fragile nature of trust in a world that's falling apart. He remembers the previous life, a timeline where Zhang Qi's entire dorm was slaughtered by the infected because one of their own, a man they called a brother, betrayed them for a chance at survival. Zhang's gaze shifts to the other friend in the car, his eyes burning with a silent, accusatory intensity as he wonders which one of them holds the seed of that future betrayal. He demands to know who it was, his voice a low growl that vibrates with the weight of a past they haven't even lived yet. The scene shifts away from the tension of the car to a high-rise apartment overlooking the city, where the morning sun is just beginning to touch the glass. Inside, a woman with long, dark hair stands by a window, her silhouette framed by the luxury of her surroundings. She is on the phone, her voice honeyed and manipulative as she speaks to someone she calls Honey, asking about the delivery of supplies she was promised. She mentions how chaotic it's becoming outside and how she's too terrified to even step foot in a supermarket, her words painting a picture of a helpless victim. On the other end of the line, a man's voice reassures her, promising to send everything over as soon as he's finished with his current business. Suddenly, a series of heavy, aggressive thuds echo through her apartment, the sound of someone pounding on her front door with a violence that makes her heart skip a beat. She gasps, her eyes wide with a sudden spike of anxiety as she tells the man on the phone that she has to go. She approaches the door with trembling steps, her breath hitching in her throat as she peers through the tiny glass of the peephole. Her tension breaks when she sees a familiar face on the other side, and she pulls the door open, snapping at her friend for knocking so hard and scaring her half to death. The friend, a woman with sharp features and a worried expression, brushes past her into the apartment, her voice frantic as she delivers the news. She tells her that old Lou from the first floor was taken away by the police and an ambulance earlier that morning, the reality of the rabid flu finally hitting home. The dark-haired woman pales, her hand going to her throat as she realizes the chaos downstairs wasn't just a random occurrence. Her friend leans in, her eyes gleaming with a predatory kind of greed as she suggests that the flu isn't just a scare, but an opportunity. She tells her to call him immediately and let him know that Jiang Xiaoyong has a massive stockpile of supplies hidden away in his abandoned factory. She whispers that they can make a fortune during this pandemic if they play their cards right, her voice filled with a cold ambition. She demands that they seal the deal as soon as possible, her eyes narrowing as she plots to get a bigger cut of the profits, completely unaware that the man they are planning to exploit is no longer the easy target he once was. As the first light of a dying sun breaks over the horizon, the true scale of the fortress comes into view. A sleek black vehicle screeches to a halt before the massive, reinforced gates of an industrial complex that looks more like a medieval castle than a factory. The tires kick up a cloud of dust and grit, the engines growl echoing off the cold concrete walls. This is the sanctuary Jiang has prepared, a bastion of steel and stone designed to withstand the coming storm. The students inside the car press their faces against the glass, their eyes wide with a mixture of terror and awe. They've spent the last few hours fleeing for their lives, and the sight of such a formidable structure feels like a miracle they don't quite believe in yet. Zhang Qi steps out of the car, his legs trembling as he takes in the sheer height of the walls and the barbed wire glinting under the moonlight. He mutters under his breath that the place is unbelievable, a literal fortress in the middle of a nightmare. He looks at Jiang, who is already walking toward the entrance with a calm, practiced gait. The weight of the moment is crushing, the silence of the surrounding wasteland amplified by the heavy thud of their own heartbeats. Jiang doesn't turn back to look at them. He knows they are following, driven by the raw instinct to stay close to the only man who seems to know what he's doing. He walks with the confidence of a king returning to his throne, his every movement radiating a silent authority that demands respect. As they approach the inner sanctum, the heavy metal doors groan open, revealing the silhouettes of those who have been waiting. An older man with a sharp, silver goatee and a woman in a rugged leather jacket step forward, their faces etched with a relief so profound it's almost painful to witness. They rush toward Jiang, their voices overlapping as they ask if he's okay and tell him how glad they are that he's finally back. The woman's hand rests on the hilt of a blade at her waist, a clear sign that the peace inside these walls is maintained by constant vigilance. Jiang offers them a small, knowing smile, a rare moment of humanity in his otherwise frozen exterior. He tells them not to worry and immediately shifts the focus to the newcomers huddled behind him. He introduces Zhang Qi and his classmates, declaring with a chilling finality that they will be their companions from now on. The students look at each other, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. They aren't just guests, they are now part of a survival unit where the rules are absolute and the stakes are life and death. Shengbo, the older man, nods solemnly, his eyes scanning the group of shell-shocked teenagers. Jiang instructs him to take a few of the guys and show them around, making it clear that they need to understand the regulations of the fortress immediately. There is no room for error here, and Jiang's tone suggests that any deviation from the rules will be met with swift consequences. One of the students, a young man with thick glasses, looks around the sterile, industrial hallway with a growing sense of unease. He whispers to his friend, asking why the place feels less like a refuge and more like a high-security detention center in northern Myanmar. His voice is laced with a desperate kind of suspicion, his mind already looking for the hidden catch in Zhang's offer of safety. Another student, Yiming, steps forward with a forced boldness, his eyes darting toward the weapons Shengbo is carrying. He asks if they can be issued weapons too, claiming they want to contribute to the defense of the facility. It's a transparent power play, a move born of the fear that being unarmed makes them nothing more than cattle. Zhang's gaze flickers toward him, a cold, blue intensity that seems to strip away Yiming's bravado. A more level-headed student quickly intervenes, grabbing Yiming's arm and whispering for him to shut up. He warns that they just got here and need to earn trust before asking for guns. The tension in the hallway is thick enough to choke on, a silent battle of wills playing out under the flickering fluorescent lights. Jiang remains the eye of the storm, his expression unreadable as he tells them they'll get their weapons in a few days. He then points toward the student being carried, noting that his injuries are severe and ordering him to be taken to the medical room for an immediate checkup. The authority in his voice leaves no room for argument, and the group quickly disperses, leaving the heavy silence of the fortress to settle over them once more. Later that evening, in a secluded corner of the facility, the students are trying to process their new reality. One of them is drying his hair with a towel, sighing about how comfortable the place is compared to the carnage they left behind. But the guy with glasses, the one they call Fourth, is still seething. He snaps at Yiming, asking why he stopped him from pushing for weapons earlier. His face is twisted with a bitter resentment, his fear having curdled into a dangerous kind of paranoia. He argues that given their current situation, they are being protected at best and are practically under house arrest at worst. He points a trembling finger toward the door, his voice rising as he questions Jiang's true motives. He asks what Jiang's background is and why a complete stranger would risk everything to save them. When Yiming reminds him that Jiang claims someone hired him, Fourth scoffed. He demands to know who hired him, pointing out that Jiang won't even give a name. He suggests that Jiang is lying and that they are walking into a trap. His eyes fixate on the medical room, his voice dropping to a dark, conspiratorial whisper. He points out how secure the room is, claiming it's more like a prison than a clinic. He throws out a horrifying theory, that Jiang is planning to harvest their injured friend's organs. The suggestion hangs in the air like a foul mist, poisoning the minds of the others. Fourth declares that they need to strike first before Jiang can make his move. When his friend hesitates, worried about betraying the man who saved them, Fourth's expression turns predatory. He sneers that he'd rather betray the world than let the world betray him. He outlines a plan to take over the fortress and seize control, pointing out that besides Jiang, there's only an old man and a young girl. He suggests they capture them while Jiang is away, his eyes gleaming with a cold, ambitious light. He even casts a disgusting look toward Shanshan, suggesting they could use her for their own amusement once they are in charge. The silence that follows is deafening, his friend staring at him with a mixture of shock and daze. Realizing he's pushed too far, Fourth quickly raises his hands and laughs it off, claiming he was just messing with them. But as he wipes the sweat from his brow, the mask of a joker fails to hide the darkness underneath. He thinks to himself that his friends are weak and that once he succeeds, they will be nothing more than his lackeys for life. He has no idea that every word, every thought of betrayal, is already being weighed by the man he intends to overthrow. Meanwhile, Jiang is sitting in a vast, dimly lit warehouse area, the shelves behind him stacked high with crates. Shengbo approaches him, reporting that the students have been settled and that Qin Chong is being monitored in the medical bay. He confirms that all doors and windows are secured as instructed. Jiang thanks him, his voice calm but his eyes scanning the shadows. He tells Shengbo and Shanshan to get some rest, warning that no one knows what tomorrow will bring. As Shengbo turns to leave, Jiang's expression hardens into something truly terrifying. He tells the old man to keep a very close eye on the two students with Zhang Qi. He states with a chilling certainty that he has a feeling there's a traitor among them. The weight of his words hangs heavy in the room, a silent promise that he is already 3 steps ahead of any plot they might hatch. Alone in the silence of the fortress, Jiang stands in the center of the massive room, the blue moonlight filtering through the high windows. Suddenly, a translucent blue window flickers into existence before him, the digital interface of the system glowing with an ethereal light. It's time to prepare for the next phase. He navigates the system store, his eyes scanning the available supply boxes. He taps on the Apocalypse Farmer box, and a notification chimes, 2 points deducted, current points 18. He doesn't stop there. He redeems the sugar, oil, and protein box for 5 points, and then the armed deterrent box for another 5. His point total drops to 8, but the air around him begins to vibrate with power. A blinding light erupts in the center of the warehouse as the rewards materialize. The system lists the haul: 50 corn seeds, 200 kilograms of starch sausage, 100 kilograms of braised pork, 50 boxes of pickled cabbage noodles, and 1,500 rounds of 9mm ammunition. A massive mountain of crates and boxes now fills the space, a literal treasure trove in a world where a single can of food will soon be worth a human life. Jiang looks at the supplies, a flicker of satisfaction crossing his face. He knows that while money is currently losing its value, these resources are invaluable. He is building more than a fortress. He is building an empire, and he has the tools to ensure it never falls. The next morning, the peace of the fortress is shattered by the distant roar of high-performance engines. 3 black SUVs tear across the asphalt, their tires screaming as they drift around a corner toward the factory. Inside one of the vehicles, a man in a sharp suit watches the approaching building through the windshield, confirming over his phone that they've reached the correct address. He has a look of greedy anticipation, his eyes fixed on the prize he believes is waiting for him inside. The vehicles screech to a halt in front of the main gate, and a group of thugs armed with machetes and baseball bats piles out. Their leader, the same man who tried to intimidate Jiang on the highway, points toward the gate and bellows for his men to break it down. He's convinced that this is just a normal house with a few extra locks, completely unaware of the lethality waiting behind the steel. The thugs swarm the entrance, their weapons clattering against the reinforced metal with a futile, rhythmic thud. They kick and scream, their faces contorted with a mindless rage, but the gate doesn't even vibrate. One of the goons, panting and covered in sweat, turns to the boss and tells him the door is at least an inch thick and impossible to breach with what they have. The boss's face turns a deep shade of purple, a vein throbbing in his temple as he realizes he's been underestimated. He screams at them to bring out the big guns, his voice cracking with fury. They haul heavy wooden crates from the back of the SUV, but they aren't carrying firearms. Instead, they reveal rows of wine bottles stuffed with rags. The thugs light the fuses, the flickering flames reflecting in their sadistic eyes. They hurl the Molotov cocktails over the walls, and explosions of orange fire erupt across the compound. The courtyard is instantly transformed into an inferno, the heat radiating off the concrete as the thugs cheer at the destruction they've unleashed. Thick, oily black smoke billows into the clear blue sky, a signal of war that can be seen for miles. The thugs watch with grins, thinking they've already won, but inside the fortress, the response is immediate and disciplined. Shan Shan and the others sprint toward the flames, armed with buckets of water and fire extinguishers. Their faces are tight with a mixture of fear and determination, the reality of the apocalypse finally hitting home. Shan Shan realizes that Jiang was right, the disaster hasn't even fully struck, and people are already committing atrocities. She throws a bucket of water onto the base of a fire, her eyes fixed on the tower where she knows Jiang is moving into position. Jiang Xiaoyong appears on the balcony of the watchtower, his face a mask of cold, clinical fury. He grips a heavy automatic rifle, the metal gleaming under the morning sun. Beside him, Shengbo looks down at the attackers, his eyes widening as he recognizes the leader. He tells Jiang it's the same bastard who was messing with them on the highway. Below, the thugs spot the movement on the tower. The leader points up, his voice a jagged edge of hatred as he screams for the little bastard to come out or he'll burn the whole doghouse to the ground. He's arrogant, fueled by the belief that his numbers and his fire give him the upper hand. Jiang looks down at him with utter contempt, his blue eyes devoid of any mercy. He calmly tells them they have 5 minutes to bring their lackeys and get lost. The thugs erupt into mocking laughter, insulted by the threat from a man they think is trapped. They yell about the power of their boss and prepare to light another round of Molotovs, their movements sloppy and overconfident. A system notification flashes in Jiang's vision, new task, ordinary threat. The objective is to eliminate the threat quickly for a reward of 10 points. Jiang's grip on the rifle tightens. He notes that these guys are scum, committing arson before the social order has even fully collapsed. They don't care if people get burned alive, and in his mind, that makes them less than human. He decides that letting them live through the apocalypse would only lead to more innocent deaths and threaten the safety of his fortress. He takes a deep breath, centers his aim, and pulls the trigger. A single, deafening shot rings out, the muzzle flash a brief spark against the daylight. The leader of the thugs lets out a blood-curdling scream as his hand is nearly obliterated by the high-velocity round. He collapses to the pavement, clutching his mangled limb as blood pools around him. His men freeze, their laughter replaced by a sudden, paralyzing terror. Jiang tsks, looking at his rifle with a look of mild annoyance. He mutters that he's been living a peaceful life for too long and that even his shooting skills have gotten rusty. The thugs realize they are completely outmatched. They scream about long guns and scramble back toward their SUVs, their bravado vanishing in an instant. They beg for cover, their voices high and frantic as they try to retreat from the rain of lead they know is coming. Jiang isn't about to let them leave. He wants to finish today's business today, his hatred for waiting driving his next move. He opens fire again, a continuous, rhythmic chatter that shreds the air. The thugs are cut down as they try to pile into their vehicles, the bullets punching through the thin metal of the SUVs like paper. The leader is hauled into the back of one of the cars as they desperately try to peel away, the tires screeching in a frantic bid for escape. Shengbo watches in awe as Jiang continues to fire, his movements fluid and professional. The bullets find their marks with terrifying precision, shattering the back window of the retreating SUV and sending sparks flying from the engine block. Jiang reloads with a practiced ease, the empty magazine clattering against the floor of the tower. Shengbo is stunned, realizing that Jiang's proficiency is better than most of the elite soldiers he served with. He looks at the young man, wondering what kind of background could produce such a lethal survivor. The SUV finally screeches to a halt a few hundred yards away, smoke pouring from under the hood and the body of the car riddled with holes. The thugs inside are trapped, their groans of pain echoing across the empty road. Jiang tells Shengbo to have Zhang Qi and the others come out to clean up the mess. He pauses, a dark, calculating thought crossing his mind. He considers letting the wounded thugs turn into zombies so the students can get some much-needed combat practice. He decides there's no rush and looks at the dying men on the road, stating simply that he has other plans for them. The scene shifts to another vehicle approaching the factory from a different direction. A man in a white suit is driving, his expression one of bored impatience as he asks if they are almost there. In the back seat, two women, Cui Jing and Wen Shuya, are lounging with an air of unearned superiority. Cui Jing is dressed in a provocative outfit, her makeup perfect despite the chaos of the world outside. Wen Shuya mocks her, pointing out how she always puts on an act whenever their leader, Li Shuxiong, is around. She asks if Cui Jing really thinks she can fool anyone with her little tricks. They pull up near the factory, and Li Shuxiong tells them to go inside while he waits in the car. Cui Jing complains about her heels, but when Shuya drags her along, reminding her that they need to get that loser, Jiang Xiaoyong, under control. They have no idea that the man they are planning to manipulate is the same one who just decimated an armed squad. Li Shuxiong watches them walk away, his eyes cold as he speaks into his phone, telling his people to be ready to move the moment he starts the engine. Inside his other vehicles, more armed men are waiting, their faces hidden in the shadows. They are prepared for a hostile takeover, believing that Jiang is an easy target who has simply stumbled upon a goldmine of supplies. The two women continue their walk toward the gate, Cui Jing boasting that she dressed up specifically to ensure they can easily control Jiang. She knows he's aware of her affair with Li Shuxiong, but she believes her charms are enough to overcome any resentment he might have. They stop dead in their tracks as they reach the road leading to the main entrance. The pavement is littered with bodies and the smoking wreckage of the previous attack. When Shuya gasps, her hand going to her mouth as she wonders if there was a shootout. They look at the blood and the twisted metal, realizing that these people have been dead for a while. They assume that two rival groups fought over Jiang's supplies and that Jiang himself is likely dead. Cui Jing doesn't show a shred of grief. She only wonders if the supplies are still there. Suddenly, a pair of bloodshot, milky eyes peers over the edge of the wrecked SUV. One of the thugs has already begun to turn, his body twitching with the unnatural hunger of the rabbit flu. The women reach the main gate and find it tightly shut, the silence of the facility feeling heavy and ominous. When Shuya wonders if the closed door means Jiang is actually okay, her voice trembling with a sudden spike of anxiety. Shanshan's voice suddenly booms from the tower above, demanding to know who they are and how they found this place. The women jump, their eyes darting upward to see the young girl looking down at them with a crossbow leveled at their chests. Cui Jing quickly puts on her best fake smile, her voice honeyed and manipulative as she shouts back that they are Zhang's friends. She even has the audacity to claim that she is Zhang's girlfriend, hoping to use the lie to gain entry. When Shuya whispers to her to be careful, pointing out the weapon in Shanshan's hand. But Cui Jing is arrogant, knowing that Li Shuxiong is nearby with pistols and can take Jiang down the moment the door is open. Jiang Xiaoyong steps out onto the balcony, his presence immediately commanding the space. He recognizes them instantly, the women who betrayed him in his previous life. He activates his Eye of Insight, his eyes glowing with a terrifying blue flame that seems to pierce through their very souls. Cui Jing tries to maintain her act, claiming they were worried about him and asking if he doesn't care about them anymore. Jiang just smirks, his voice a low growl as he asks if that beast Li Shuxiong is hiding nearby. He demands to know how many people he brought and what weapons they have. The women freeze, the color draining from their faces as they wonder how he could possibly know their plan. Jiang doesn't wait for an answer. He pulls a pistol and fires a shot that kicks up dust right between their feet. Cui Jing screams in terror, her fake persona shattering as she asks if he's crazy. When Shuya tries to speak calmly, warning Cui Jing not to provoke him because he has a gun. But Cui Jing is hysterical, daring him to shoot her dead, convinced he won't actually do it. Jiang smiles darkly, his voice filled with a chilling promise as he tells them that shooting them dead would be far too easy. A low, guttural growl echoes from the road behind them, followed by the sound of dragging footsteps. The women turn around and their eyes widen in pure, unadulterated horror. The thugs who were killed earlier have fully turned, their skin a sickly gray and their eyes glowing with a mindless hunger. They are the rabid flu patients, and they are closing in. Jiang watches with a cold, detached satisfaction as the realization hits the women. He tells them he's going to let them die at the hands of the monsters they helped bring to his door. The lead zombie lets out a terrifying roar, its jaw unhinged as it lunges toward them. The women scream and sprint toward the car, their heels clicking frantically against the asphalt as they beg Li Shuxiong to save them. Li Shuxiong sees the horde of undead and the look of pure lethality on Zhang's face. He doesn't hesitate for a single second. He screams into his radio for his men to turn around and floors the accelerator. The tires screech as he peels away, leaving the women screaming in the dust. They reach for the door handles of the retreating car, their faces masks of desperation as their honey abandons them to a gruesome, agonizing fate. The last thing they see is the cold, unwavering gaze of Jiang Xiaoyong watching from above as the darkness finally catches up to them. The betrayal is absolute, a jagged blade twisted in the backs of those who thought they were safe under his protection. Behind the retreating vehicle, a pack of shadows detaches itself from the gloom, moving with an unnatural, jerky speed that defies human biology. These aren't just people anymore, they are the physical manifestation of a world that has finally broken. Cui Jing's voice shatters the air, a high-pitched, jagged scream of pure desperation as she realizes the man she relied on has discarded her like trash. She bellows his name, her throat raw, but the only response is the fading roar of the engine and the approaching shuffle of death. The realization hits her like a physical blow. She is nothing more than a distraction to buy him a few more seconds of life. Her eyes are wide, the pupils dilated with a terror so profound it seems to swallow her entire face. She clutches her designer bag as if it could somehow shield her from the monsters closing in, her knuckles white and trembling. The shadows behind her grow taller, their eyes glowing with a mindless, predatory hunger that sees her only as meat. She screams that she doesn't want to die like this, her voice cracking under the weight of her impending doom. The irony is suffocating. She spent her life manipulating others for comfort, only to be discarded in the dirt when the bill finally came due. A hand reaches out, not to help, but to seize. The movement is blurred, a frantic gesture of a woman who has lost everything but the instinct to survive for one more heartbeat. The sky above is a mocking, brilliant blue, a stark contrast to the red horror unfolding on the gray pavement below. The wind whips her hair across her face, stinging her eyes as she tries to find an escape that doesn't exist. The ground feels like it's tilting, the world spinning out of control as the first of the monster's lunges. A dark, heavy strap flies through the air, a useless piece of leather that once symbolized status, now just another piece of debris in the kill zone. The monsters are a blur of gray skin and tattered clothes, their movements a sickening parody of the people they used to be. They don't feel pain, they don't feel pity, and they certainly don't care about her screams. Cui Jing's face is a mask of pure, unadulterated agony as she is forced to confront the reality of her choices. She is alone in a world that has no room for the weak or the treacherous. The first monster's hand is inches from her, its fingers gnarled and stained with the blood of its previous victims. The air is thick with the smell of decay and the metallic tang of fear, a scent that only drives the creatures into a deeper frenzy. She trips, her heels catching on the uneven road, sending her sprawling onto the cold, unforgiving concrete. The impact jars her bones, but the pain is nothing compared to the cold dread pooling in her stomach. She looks up, and for the first time, she sees her death clearly. The lead monster lets out a terrifying, guttural roar, its jaw unhinged and its teeth bared in a permanent snarl of hunger. It's not just one, a whole swarm of them descends upon her, a tide of gray flesh that threatens to drown her where she lies. She tries to crawl away, her fingernails scraping against the asphalt, but it's a futile effort. The monsters are faster, driven by a biological imperative that knows no fatigue. She gasps for air, but her lungs feel like they're filled with lead, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The first bite is a shock of cold and heat, a sharp, tearing sensation that makes her vision explode into white light. She screams again, but this time the sound is wet, choked by the blood rising in her throat. The monsters swarm over her, a chaotic mass of limbs and teeth, their growls drowning out her final, desperate pleas. When Shuya watches from a distance, her face pale and her body frozen in a state of shock. She sees her friend being torn apart, the brutality of the scene stripping away any lingering hope she had for a peaceful resolution. She realizes that the rules of the old world are gone, replaced by a singular, brutal law: survive at any cost. The blood stains the pavement, a dark, spreading pool that marks the end of Cui Jing's ambition and the beginning of a new, darker era. When Shuya turns and runs, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she tries to put as much distance as possible between herself and the feeding frenzy. She doesn't look back, she can't look back, because she knows that if she does, the terror will paralyze her. The monsters continue their feast, their mindless hunger finally satisfied for a brief, bloody moment. High above, on the reinforced balcony of the fortress, Jiang Xiaoyong watches the scene with a detached, clinical intensity. He doesn't feel pity for the woman dying in the street, he only sees a threat that has been neutralized. A translucent blue window flickers into existence before his eyes, the digital interface of the system glowing with a cold, ethereal light. The notification is simple and final: task, ordinary threat eliminated. System points plus 10. Current points, 18. For Jiang, this isn't a tragedy, it's a transaction. Every death is just another step toward his own survival, another resource to be managed in a grand game of the apocalypse. Shanshan stands beside him, her hand covering her mouth as she tries to process the horror she just witnessed. Her eyes are wide with a mixture of fear and awe, the reality of Jiang's world finally sinking in. She looks at him, searching for some sign of emotion, but his face is a mask of stone, his blue eyes fixed on the horizon. He is the architect of this sanctuary, a man who has already lived through this nightmare once and is determined to never be a victim again. Another chime echoes in the silence of the balcony, a new notification appearing on the screen. New task released. New task, street sweep. Task requirement: clear the infected and monsters wandering outside the base. 0%. Reward points, 10. Zhang's grip on the railing tightens, his mind already calculating the most efficient way to complete the objective. He knows that the peace inside these walls is fragile, maintained only by constant vigilance and the ruthless elimination of any external threats. Shen Shen whispers, her voice trembling, asking if those people really just turned into zombies like that. She can't wrap her head around the speed of the transformation, the way a living, breathing human can become a monster in the blink of an eye. Jiang turns to her, his expression softening just a fraction, but his words are hard and uncompromising. He explains that it is officially the apocalypse now, and the air itself is thick with alien infection sources. He tells her that the dead exposed outdoors will quickly mutate, and even the living are at high risk if they are injured or have weak constitutions. His voice is steady, a calm anchor in the middle of the storm, but the information he delivers is terrifying. He is a man who knows the secrets of the end times, and he is sharing them with her not to scare her, but to prepare her. Shan Shan looks down at her own hands, the realization that she is breathing in the very thing that turned those people into monsters making her skin crawl. She asks what they should do, her eyes searching his for guidance. Jiang looks out over the wasteland, his gaze piercing the smoke and the shadows. He tells her that they need to adapt, to become stronger than the infection that seeks to claim them. He declares that it's time to call everyone together for a meeting. The authority in his voice is absolute, a command that demands immediate obedience. He turns and walks back into the fortress, his every movement radiating a silent power that makes the heavy steel doors seem like mere toys in his hands. Inside the main hall, the students are gathered around a large wooden table, their faces etched with a mixture of exhaustion and anxiety. The room is dimly lit, the shadows stretching long across the floor as the sun begins to set. Jiang stands at the head of the table, his presence commanding the space. He looks at each of them, his eyes scanning for any sign of weakness or betrayal. He tells them that for the next 2 days, they must stay indoors and keep all windows and doors tightly shut. He explains that they need to let their bodies gradually adapt to the infection source, a process that will greatly reduce their risk of mutation. The students listen in silence, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. They are no longer just teenagers. They are survivors in a world that wants them dead. One of the students, his face pale and sweat beading on his forehead, asks about Chinchong. His voice is laced with a desperate kind of hope, a need to believe that their friend can still be saved. Zhang's expression hardens, his eyes flickering toward the closed door of the medical bay. He knows the truth, a truth that none of them are ready to hear. The scene shifts to the sterile, blue-tinged light of the medical room. Chinchong lies on a narrow bed, his body convulsing in a series of violent, rhythmic spasms. His skin is no longer the healthy tan of a young athlete, it is a sickly, bruised purple, the color of a deep, internal rot. Thick, black veins bulge beneath the surface of his flesh, snaking their way up his arms and across his chest like a network of parasitic vines. He is no longer human, he is a vessel for the virus, a cocoon for the monster that is about to emerge. His eyes are rolled back in his head, showing only the whites, and a low, guttural growl vibrates in his throat. The sound is primal, a noise that has no place in a civilized world. The purple discoloration spreads to his neck and face, his features twisting into a mask of mindless rage. He is the first of their group to fall, a grim reminder of the stakes they are playing for. Back in the city, the chaos has reached a fever pitch. A massive skyscraper stands against the sky, thick plumes of black smoke billowing from its upper floors like funeral pyres. The streets below are a war zone, a tangled mess of abandoned cars and fleeing people. A yellow taxi sits smashed against a concrete barrier, its windshield shattered and its driver nowhere to be seen. People are climbing over walls, their faces masks of desperation as they try to escape the invisible death that stalks the air. It is complete and utter chaos, the social order collapsing in a matter of hours. In a small, cramped apartment, a man named Yang Tao stands by a window, his face etched with a grim determination. He looks out at the burning city, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what he must do. He turns to his wife, Xiaoli, and their young son, Shuai, his voice low and urgent. He tells them that he needs to go to the warehouse tonight to bring back the remaining supplies. He knows that food and water will soon be more valuable than gold, and he is willing to risk everything to ensure his family's survival. He tells Xiaoli to stay home and wait for him, warning her to never open the door for anyone but him, no matter who knocks. The fear in her eyes is palpable, but she nods, clutching her son to her chest. Suddenly, a loud, rhythmic pounding echoes through the apartment, the sound of someone kicking the front door with a violent intensity. Yang Tao freezes, his hand tightening around the grip of a golf club he grabbed for protection. He signals for his family to hide, his breath coming in short, sharp bursts. He approaches the door, his heart hammering against his ribs. He asks who it is, his voice trembling despite his best efforts to remain calm. A voice from the other side calls out, asking if he's home. Yang Tao exhales a breath he didn't know he was holding, a look of profound relief crossing his face. He thinks it's his boss, a man he trusted, a man he thought was his friend. He opens the door, ready to welcome a fellow survivor, but the moment the latch clicks, the door is kicked inward with a force that sends him reeling. A group of men in sharp, dark suits storms into the apartment, their faces cold and devoid of any mercy. They aren't here to help, they are here to take. Yang Tao is tackled to the ground, the golf club clattering uselessly across the floor. He is pinned down by a man with a cruel, mocking smile, his face pressed against the cold tiles. He gasps, asking what the hell is going on, reminding them that he always treated them well. The leader of the group, a man with sharp features and eyes like flint, sneers down at him. He tells Yang Tao that in his eyes, he was never anything more than a lapdog. He demands the warehouse keys and the address, his voice a low, dangerous growl. Yang Tao remains silent, his jaw set in a defiant snarl. He knows that if he gives them the keys, his family will have nothing. The boss's smile widens, a predatory glint in his eyes. He looks over at Xiaoli and Shuai, who are huddled in the corner, their faces pale with terror. He tells Yang Tao that he's still acting tough, but he wonders how long that will last. He reaches out and grabs Xiaoli by the hair, dragging her toward the center of the room. She screams, her hands clawing at his arm, but he is too strong. Shuai cries out, his small voice filled with a heartbreaking desperation as he tries to pull his mother away. The boss kicks the boy aside, a casual, brutal movement that sends him sliding across the floor. Yang Tao bellows in rage, his body straining against the men holding him down, but it's no use. The boss leans in close to his ear, his breath hot and smelling of expensive tobacco. He tells Yang Tao that he has a choice: give up the warehouse, or watch his family suffer. He mentions Jiang Xiaoyong, his voice dripping with a mixture of envy and hatred. He says that if they could seize the supplies Jiang has stocked up at his factory, they would be set for life. Yang Tao spits out a warning, telling them to stop eyeing Jiang's stuff. He says that he saw Jiang when he was delivering goods, and the man is packing heat on his waist. He warns them that Jiang is not someone to be trifled with, that he somehow got wind of this disaster ahead of time and is prepared for anything. The boss just laughs, a cold, hollow sound that echoes through the apartment. He tells Yang Tao that's his problem to figure out. He offers a trade, Jiang's supplies for the safety of his wife and child. He calls it a fair deal, his eyes fixed on Yang Tao's face, waiting for the break. Yang Tao's defiance wavers, the weight of his family's lives crushing his resolve. He looks at his wife, her eyes pleading with him to do whatever it takes to save their son. He closes his eyes, a single tear tracing a path through the dust on his cheek. He knows he has no choice. The scene shifts back to the fortress, where the silence of the medical bay is shattered by a series of terrifying, inhuman roars. Chen Chong has fully turned, his body a twisted, muscular version of its former self. He strains against the restraints, the metal bed frame groaning under the pressure of his unnatural strength. The students stand in the doorway, their faces masks of pure horror. They see their friend, the person they laughed with and studied with, transformed into a mindless killing machine. Jiang Xiaoyong stands in front of them, his expression unreadable. He pulls a long, sharp knife from a sheath at his waist and holds it out to one of the students. He tells him to take it and finish him off. The student, a young man with thick glasses and trembling hands, looks at the knife as if it were a poisonous snake. He can't do it, he can't kill his friend. Jiang's voice is cold and demanding. He asks if he hasn't always wanted a weapon, if he hasn't always wanted the power to protect himself. He tells him that Chen Chong is already dead, and if they don't end him now, he will break free and put everyone else in danger. The student shakes his head, his eyes filling with tears. He cries out that Chen Chong is their brother, that they can't just give up on him without even trying. Jiang doesn't blink. He tells them that once the virus hits, there is no recovery. He is a man who has seen 1,000 Chen Chongs fall, and he knows that mercy in this world is just another word for suicide. Another student, Zhang Qi, steps forward, his face pale but his eyes filled with a grim resolve. He takes the knife from Zhang's hand, his fingers steady despite the chaos around him. He says he'll do it. Jiang looks at him, a flicker of something like respect crossing his face. He asks Zhang Qi if he's thought it through, warning him that once he strikes, he will be a murderer for real. He asks if he's considered the possibility that everything Jiang said was just a trick to manipulate him. Zhang Qi looks Jiang straight in the eye and says he trusts him. He turns toward the bed, the knife glinting in the sterile light. Chen Chong roars again, a sound that seems to vibrate in Zhang Qi's very bones. He raises the knife, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. He hesitates for a heartbeat, the memory of their friendship flashing through his mind. But then he sees the mindless hunger in Chen Chong's eyes, the way his jaw snaps at the air, and he knows that his friend is truly gone. He plunges the knife down, a single, decisive strike that ends the roar forever. A system notification flashes in Zhang's vision, rare mutated specimen detected. He tells the other students to leave the room, his voice leaving no room for argument. He says that Chen Chong's condition is special and he still has a use for him. The students retreat, their faces pale and their spirits broken. They have just witnessed the death of their innocence, the final end of the world they once knew. Jiang stands alone in the room with the body, his mind already turning to the next phase of his plan. He knows that the rare mutation in Qin Chang's blood could be the key to a new level of power, a way to ensure his fortress remains impregnable. The scene shifts back to Yang Tao, who is driving a sleek black car through the ruins of the city. He is alone, his face a mask of grief and rage. He has given the thugs the information they wanted, but he knows they won't keep their word. He is driving toward the factory, his mind a whirlwind of desperate plans. Suddenly, he loses control of the car, the tires skidding on a patch of oil and blood. The vehicle slams into a concrete pole with a sickening crunch, the airbag deploying in a cloud of white dust. He sits in the wreckage for a moment, his head spinning and his vision blurred. He crawls out of the car, his clothes torn and his body bruised. He looks around, realizing he is in a part of the city he doesn't recognize. The air is thick with smoke, and the sound of distant screams echoes through the empty streets. He curses his luck, his hand going to his head as he tries to steady himself. He knows he can't stay here. The sound of the crash will have attracted every monster in the area. He starts to walk, his movements slow and pained. Suddenly, a shadow moves in the corner of his eye. He turns, his heart leaping into his throat. A zombie is lunging toward him, its eyes milky and its mouth stained with fresh blood. He tries to dodge, but he is too slow. The monster's teeth sink into his arm, a sharp, searing pain that makes him scream in agony. He manages to kick the creature away and grabs a crowbar from the wreckage of his car. He swings with all his might, the heavy metal bar smashing into the zombie's skull with a wet, crunching sound. The creature falls to the ground, its limbs twitching for a moment before going still. Yang Tao stands over it, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He looks down at the bite on his arm, the dark, infected blood already beginning to seep into his veins. He knows what this means. He knows he is running out of time. He starts to run, his desperation driving him forward even as his body begins to fail. He has to reach the factory. He has to find Jiang Xiaoyong. He is the only one who might be able to save him, the only one who knows the secrets of the virus. The scene shifts back to the fortress, where Jiang and the students are gathered outside the main gates. They are all wearing protective gear, heavy leather jackets, reinforced pads, and thick gloves. Jiang is giving them a final briefing, his voice calm and authoritative. He tells them that zombies have no reason, which gives them an explosive power that is much stronger than regular people. He warns them that they are incredibly dangerous and that with their current lack of combat experience, it is too easy to get hurt. He tells them they must wear the protective gear until they gain more experience. The students nod, their faces grim and determined. They are no longer the scared teenagers who arrived a few days ago. They are a unit, a team of hunters ready to take back their world. A zombie appears at the edge of the clearing, its movements jerky and unpredictable. Jiang signals for the students to move in. They attack with a disciplined ferocity, using bats and axes to drive the creature back. They work together, one distracting the monster while the others strike from the sides. It is a brutal, messy business, but they are learning. They are becoming the predators. One of the students, his face splattered with gray blood, asks Jiang how they did. Jiang offers a small, rare smirk, but before he can answer, his eyes widen. He reaches out and grabs a zombie's head that was sneaking up behind the student, his grip like a vice. He twists, a sickening crack echoing through the air, and the creature falls limp. He tells them to never, ever stop observing their surroundings. He warns them that the moment they think they are safe is the moment they will die. Yang Tao watches from the shadows, his heart sinking as he sees the lethal efficiency of Jiang's team. He realizes that he is no longer a man, he is a rover, a monster in the making. He feels the hunger beginning to gnaw at his stomach, the mindless rage beginning to cloud his thoughts. Suddenly, a female zombie lunges from the bushes and grabs his leg, her fingers digging into his flesh. He is pulled down, his scream echoing across the clearing. The monster lunges for his throat, its eyes glowing with a mindless, predatory hunger. The last thing he sees is the cold, unwavering gaze of Jiang Xiaoyong watching from the gates, a man who has already moved on to the next task in a never-ending series of life and death decisions. A crazed mutant sinks its teeth into a man's neck, blood spraying across the ground. The victim lets out a final, terrified gasp for air. A deafening bang echoes through the dark as someone screams in pure agony. The sounds of the apocalypse are becoming the new normal for everyone. Jiang stands over a fallen body with a smoking rifle in his hands. He's just finished clearing the area near his truck in the sun. Zhang Xingzhe stumbles forward, covered in blood and gasping for breath. He looks like a wreck, barely holding on to the last of his strength. Jiang looks at the man with a cold, piercing gaze, recognizing him instantly. He says the man's name, Zhang Xingzhe, with a tone of suspicion. Jiang limps toward him, shouting that he can't believe he's still alive to see Brother Yong. He looks desperate for any kind of help. Jiang spots a deep, bloody wound on the man's forearm. He points it out immediately, telling Zhang that he has definitely been bitten by them. Zhang stares down the barrel of Zhang's rifle, trembling with fear. He begs Brother Yong not to shoot because he has something important to say. Jiang tells him to stay back while Zhang admits he knows he's infected. He realizes he only has half a day before he turns. Zhang screams in total agony and rage about his former lackey, Yang Tao. He reveals that the bastard actually kidnapped his innocent wife and child today. Zhang begs Brother Yong for mercy, admitting he isn't exactly a saint. He insists he's never done anything truly evil and his family deserves a chance. Zhang grabs Zhang's clothes with his bloody hands and pleads for help. He asks him to save his family for the sake of the massive supplies. Jiang looks at the dying man with a cold gaze. He realizes that despite Zhang's greed, the man did actually provide a lot of useful help. Jiang looks at his group and thinks about the base's capacity. He notes that the current gender balance is off and they could use more women. Suddenly, a sharp system chime rings in Zhang's head. He looks at the notification and thinks that a new task makes this deal much more profitable. The system confirms the new task to rescue Zhang's wife and child for 25 points. It also tracks the ongoing street cleaning progress outside the fortress. Jiang finally gives Zhang a straight answer and accepts the deal. He tells him not to worry because he will personally take care of the family. Zhang slams his forehead against the pavement in a heavy bow of gratitude. He swears that he'll be Zhang's loyal servant in his next life. Zhang stays kneeling on the ground while Jiang stands over him with a wooden bat. He asks him what he needs to do for the rescue. Zhang clutches his blood-soaked shirt and pleads for Jiang to kill him. He is terrified of turning into a mutant and endangering his wife and son. Jiang turns his head and calls out to Shanshan. He tells her to go to the storeroom and bring out a bicycle for Zhang to use. Zhang sits on the ground looking up at the sky while Jiang stands over him with a wooden bat. He asks Jiang why he's helping. Zhang looks back at the ground with a small, sad smile on his face. He thanks Brother Yong and says he finally understands what needs happening. The scene pulls back as Zhang starts pedaling away on the bike across the empty lot. He moves quickly toward the buildings in the distance. Zhang hunches over the handlebars and pushes himself to ride faster. The blood from his wounds is still visible on his torn, white office shirt. A tear rolls down Zhang's cheek as he grits his teeth in pain. He looks focused on his final mission to reach his family in time. Jiang stands with his rifle slung over his shoulder, looking at the pile of dead zombies. Shanshan and the other students stand behind him silently. A close-up shows the pale, lifeless face of a zombie on the pavement. Fuel is splashed over the body to prepare for a cleanup by fire. A massive pillar of fire and black smoke erupts into the clear blue sky. Jiang sighs and admits he is completely exhausted after such a long day. Jiang looks at his system screen showing 28 points. He says that a few students can kill a lone zombie now if they use melee weapons. Xingbo and the students look concerned. Jiang warns them that they definitely aren't ready to face a group of zombies or a large horde. Jiang turns his back and walks away with a rifle over his shoulder. He tells everyone to follow him as they head back toward the base. Two vertical blue panels appear against a clear sky during the transition. The group follows Jiang across the paved courtyard of the reinforced factory grounds. Jiang looks at his team walking through the open area below. He calls out Xingbo's name to get his attention before leaving for town. Jiang holds out a silver key in his palm. He tells Xingbo the storeroom has weapons and that he is heading into the city tonight. Xingbo takes the key and looks at Jiang with a serious face. He understands he is responsible for the safety of the entire fortress. Zhang Qi hits his palm with his fist, looking determined. Jiang tells him he'd only be a burden and tells Xingbo he is counting on him. Jiang walks toward his car while the group stands behind him. The sun shines over the base as the team prepares to defend the facility. Jiang sits in the driver's seat of his car, ready to move out. He has an assault rifle, a shotgun, and a sword on the seat. Jiang looks at the translucent blue screen of the system store. He sees 3 empty slots and complains that the store updates are way too slow. He reaches out and taps the manual refresh button for 2 points. He says the current mission is tough, so he needs to refresh for safety. The screen updates with a life-saving supply box and an armed deterrent box for 5 points each. The refresh cost suddenly jumps to 4 points. Jiang looks away with a slight smirk on his face. He notices the cost of refreshing doubled and realizes he has to be careful with points. Jiang stares ahead with glowing blue eyes as he pulls his hoodie strings. He spends 20 points to redeem a level 1 black tech box. A massive explosion of white light fills the inside of the car. The reward from the system manifests right in front of his face. Jiang covers his eyes with his arm to block the blinding glare. He grumbles that the light felt like he just flashbanged himself in the seat. He looks down and sees a large medical syringe filled with glowing blue liquid. He is shocked to find a +5 strength enhancement serum. Jiang immediately plunges the needle into his arm to inject the serum. He starts coughing hard as the powerful chemicals begin to change his DNA. A digital blueprint of a human body appears on a blue screen. His attributes hit 13, making him over 200% stronger than normal humans. The scene shifts away from the warehouse to a wide view of the clear blue sky. Bright white clouds drift over the city as morning begins. Tall apartment complexes tower over the city streets. Inside a quiet room, a decorative plush toy and small colorful ornaments sit on a sunlit shelf. Xiaoli huddles on a rug with her son, Shui, surrounded by toy building blocks. She looks terrified as a man's voice screams about taking everything. Two muscular thugs in business suits suddenly burst through the apartment door. The lead man in the white shirt looks down at the family aggressively. Xiaoli's face twists in total shock as she stares up at the intruders. She screams at the top of her lungs, asking what they're doing. The large man lunges forward and grabs Xiaoli by her waist and leg. She kicks and struggles against his grip, shouting for him to stop. With a brutal tug, the thug rips the front of Xiaoli's brown shirt wide open. The fabric shreds apart as she tries to pull away. A credits page appears featuring the series title and cover art of Jiang Xiaoyong. It lists the translation team and asks readers to support them. Suddenly, a glass window shatters into a million pieces. A man in a suit is thrown backward through the shards as they rain down everywhere. A man with a scar on his forehead and his hair tied back looks over his shoulder. He looks annoyed and asks why everyone is being noisy. The ponytail man tells Li Shuxiong to join them, complaining that he's already distracted. He says the task isn't even finished yet. Li Shuxiong looks back with a dismissive expression. He tells his partner that there isn't a problem since it's not their first time doing this. The ponytail man snaps back that if their target has nothing to lose, he'll fight to the death. He wants to deal with her man first. The group of thugs walks across the floor. Li grumbles about the other guy being a buzzkill and tells him he'll listen for once. In a dark room, a woman sits in silence looking down. A creaking sound effect appears as the door starts to open from the shadows. Outside, the night sky is clear with a white crescent moon. Two dark window frames look out over the quiet, star-filled horizon of the city. A zombie with a rotting face stares blankly into the street. Behind it, car headlights shine as someone stands on the road waving for help. Jiang Xiaoyong grips the steering wheel, looking focused. He notes his stamina is at 13 points, significantly improving his physical reactions and his car control. From high above, Jiang's car speeds down the highway. He weaves between the other vehicles as the bright white lines of the road blur past. The city skyline sits under the moon. A few cars drive toward the distant buildings, completely unaware of the monsters lurking in the dark streets. Jiang pulls his black SUV over to the shoulder of the dark road. He opens the driver's side door and steps out into the night. Jiang stands by the open car door and tells his passengers that driving will attract too much attention. He says they must go on foot. Jiang stops and listens as a loud roar echoes from the nearby trees. His glowing blue eyes sharpen as he senses a monster is close. Suddenly a dark figure lunges at him from the shadows. Jiang moves his arms up quickly to block the strike and keep the creature back. Jiang dodges the first attack and clenches his fist tightly. He throws a fast punch toward the monster's head while moving with high-speed force. His fist connects squarely with the attacker's face. The force of the blow sends the creature flying backward as it lets out a shocked gasp. Jiang doesn't stop and follows up with another heavy strike. He slams his hand down onto the monster to finish it off in the street. He raises his hand and looks at his glowing ring as digital pixels swirl around his arm. He stares out at the moonlit night sky. Jiang takes off running down the center of the empty city street. He moves like a blur past the tall buildings and abandoned cars ahead. A massive purple sound effect fills the screen as Jiang continues his sprint. He is moving toward his next objective at a very high speed. Jiang stands over a dead zombie on the dark road with his knife drawn. He notes that his strength and reflexes are now completely overpowering these monsters. Looking down at the corpse, Jiang grips his blade tightly while standing in the moonlight. He realizes he has more than twice the physical power of an average person. Jiang looks around and sees the path is blocked by debris. His system scanning tells him that his objective is still about 800 meters away from here. A blue system notification pops up against a background of yellow caution tape. It says he has triggered an encounter mission, which is a random event. Inside a dark convenience store, several survivors watch the glass entrance nervously. Outside, the silhouettes of several zombies are pressed up against the front windows. A young man crouched near the crates looks up at his father in fear. He asks if they are really going to die in this store. The father tells his son not to worry because those bastards cannot get inside. He claims that worst case, they will just be reunited with his mom. A man in a blue uniform turns and yells at Old Song for speaking without thinking. He says that kind of talk is really messing things up. The uniformed man looks toward the door with sweat on his face while feeling tense. He wonders if they really are going to die here today. Suddenly, the front glass shatters with a loud crash as the zombies force their way inside. The survivors stare in horror as their only protection breaks. A heavy object slams into a body with a massive thud. The impact sends dark debris flying everywhere as something crashes through the shattered store entrance. One man screams in terror while flying backward into the store shelving. His companion watches with wide eyes as the chaos breaks into their area. Silence briefly returns to the dark interior of the supermarket. Glass shards remain scattered across the floor near the entrance where the barrier just failed. The security officer looks panicked and tells the woman to stay quiet. He whispers for her to not make any noise while they hide. They huddle behind the tall shelves of the supermarket aisles. The blue lighting of the store makes everything look cold while they wait in fear. A man lies dead face down on the cold pavement. Below him, the students grip their metal pipes and bats while staring at the gruesome scene. One student looks at the body and asks who could have done this. He screams that it must have been a mutant that killed him. The other student grips his rebar and asks what exactly a mutant is. He looks confused and scared as they stand in the dark aisle. The guard raises his pistol and points it toward the darkness. He says that people who are always afraid end up at the bottom. He tells everyone to keep a close watch on their surroundings. He warns them that they don't want the mutant to ambush them from behind. Jiang leads the group down the street from a high angle. He shouts for everyone to watch their own direction before someone suddenly yells for them to stop. Two large speech bubbles appear over the empty street. One person asks what is going on, while another screams out, asking what that thing is. Jiang stands in his gray hoodie looking alert while the group pauses. Behind him, two men in police uniforms emerge with their pistols drawn and aimed. One of the officers looks closely at Jiang's face. He tells his partner that the kid looks more like a survivor than a monster to him. Jiang smirks and laughs at the mention of mutants. He tells the officer he has a big imagination and says mutants aren't exactly common yet. The police officer lowers his guard slightly and looks at Jiang. He tells the young man that it is far too dangerous to be out here alone. Jiang turns his head back toward the officers. He asks who they are and if it is just a few of them left in this area. The men stand together on the street. One officer asks about Rongxiang Garden and the mansion nearby, and Jiang says it is right across the street. The lead officer holds his gun up and looks confident. He says they can protect everyone, and Jiang laughs while thanking them for the help. The scene ends with a credits page featuring art of Jiang sitting down. It lists the names of the translation team to support the original creators. The officer looks over at Jiang and asks about Jinyu Mansion. He wants to know if Jiang is there to meet someone important tonight. The officer continues walking while looking back at Jiang. He asks if the person Jiang is looking for is a relative or perhaps a girlfriend. The officer stops and places a heavy hand on Jiang's shoulder. He tells Jiang that he needs to mentally prepare himself for what is coming. The officer clenches his teeth and calls some people beasts. Jiang looks up at him with a skeptical face and repeats the same phrase back. The officer explains that a gang of thugs is hiding in the Bu Mountain Villa area. They kill other survivors to take all their supplies. The officer waves his hand and tells Jiang to forget about it. He says they must stay vigilant whenever they run into any other survivors. Suddenly, a pale zombie lunges out of the shadows at the officer. He looks completely shocked as the monster screams and tries to bite him. The officer pulls his pistol and fires several loud shots. The muzzle flashes light up the dark street as he tries to kill the monster. After the shooting stops, the officer stands over the body. He is breathing hard and holds his gun tightly while looking down at the ground. The loud gunshots end up attracting a whole group of monsters. Multiple zombies turn their heads and start walking toward the sound of the fight. The police officer scans the dark street while gripping his pistol tight. He is looking around quickly as the sound of approaching monsters gets louder. He finally spots a vehicle and shouts that he found it. He yells for the group to hurry up and get into that blue bus. Jiang watches the survivors and thinks that running recklessly attracts more zombies. He knows a bus is good for defense but has no escape route. Jiang sprints toward the blue bus as a zombie lunges from the shadows. The officer shouts for the kid to hurry up and keep up. The group scrambles to get inside the vehicle as fast as possible. The officer grunts and slams his hand down to secure the bus entrance. Inside the bus, one of the survivors looks out the window in a panic. He screams that the monsters haven't given up and are still gathering. The officer clenches his teeth while a rotting zombie slams against the glass right behind him. The creature is desperate to get inside the bus. Dozens of pale hands press against the blue metal and glass from the outside. The entire bus is being surrounded by a massive growing horde. The officer puts his full weight against the door to keep it shut. He screams that he can't hold on to the door for much longer. A look of pure shock crosses the officer's face as he notices something through the glass. He gasps in confusion while trying to stay upright. Jiang lunges forward with a blurry burst of speed to reinforce the door. The police officer looks on in total disbelief at the kid's sudden power. The officer wonders how Jiang has such incredible strength. Jiang tells him he'll block the door and orders the others to smash windows and fight back. The officer quickly agrees and runs toward the middle of the bus. Jiang stays behind, keeping his palm pressed firmly against the glass to hold everything. Outside, the blue bus is surrounded by a group of hungry zombies. They claw at the metal and glass, trying to find a way inside. A survivor inside the vehicle screams in pure terror as the pressure mounts. He looks completely overwhelmed as the sounds of the monsters fill the air. The officer uses a long pole to strike at the zombies through the broken gaps. He grunts with effort while trying to keep the monsters away. The survivors huddle together while trying to keep the perimeter secure. The officer grips his pistol tightly, looking for any opening to take a shot. Jiang calls out to the officer to use a new weapon. The officer looks down in confusion while wondering what the young man is talking about. Jiang reveals a high-tech tactical crossbow from out of nowhere. The officer is stunned and asks where he could have possibly gotten a weapon like that. Jiang tosses the heavy crossbow over to the officer. The man catches it with a surprised grunt, feeling the weight of the powerful weapon in his hands. Thugs and survivors scramble around a large blue bus in the street. One man shouts at a zombie to get lost while bodies litter the pavement. Two dark blue vertical shapes stand out against a stark white background. This visual transition marks a shift in the story's focus or the location. Yi Ming grips a metal pipe and shouts with a look of pure madness. He claims they are children of fate who have survived twice now. Jiang stands calmly in front of the bus while his eyes glow with power. He adjusts his hoodie and prepares for whatever threat is coming next. The crescent moon shines over the dark landscape. Back at the base, a student thinks to themselves that they hope everything goes smoothly for Jiang. Inside the hallway, Yi Ming speaks up to the rest of the group. He suddenly volunteers to handle the guard duty for the entire night. Shengbo adjusts his glasses and looks at the young man with suspicion. He asks why Yi Ming is suddenly acting so enthusiastic about working. Yi Ming yells back at Shengbo to mind his own business. He claims he's always been this hardworking and tells him to stop talking nonsense. The group leader decides to trust him since he's acting so brave. He tells the other students to head back to their rooms now. The leader gives a final warning for Yi Ming to be careful and wake them if anything happens. Yi Ming tells him not to worry. Yi Ming sits on a wooden stool on the balcony, staring out into the dark night. He looks serious while keeping watch over the grounds. He thinks to himself that there is no time to waste. He needs to get everything sorted out before Jiang Xiaoyong finally returns to base. Inside a quiet room, an elderly man with a white beard lies fast asleep in his bed. He remains completely unaware of any nearby danger. The room stays silent as the old man rests under the covers. The cool blue moonlight filters in while he continues to sleep very peacefully. A brief transition shows a credit page with Jiang Xiaoyong battling a massive horde of red-eyed zombies. The hero remains focused on his difficult survival. The scene fades through a dark gradient as the perspective shifts back to the interior of the base. The tension begins to rise in silence. A close-up shows the old man's face while he is still dreaming. He looks calm despite the suspicious movements happening right beside his bedside. Suddenly, the old man's eyes snap wide open in total shock. A loud sound effect highlights his realization that someone is standing in the room. Yi Ming looms over the bed, looking sweaty and panicked. He shouts, "Damn it," as he realizes the old man has actually woken up early. The old man lets out a pained cry of "Arg" as the situation turns violent. He struggles while being confronted by the younger student today. Lu Yiming sprints down the hallway as fast as he can. He's making a break for it and doesn't plan on looking back right now. The girl and the other students watch him bolt. She screams out that Lu Yiming stole the supplies while they all stand there completely stunned. The old man yells for the group to hurry up and stop him. He demands to know what the hell Lu Yiming is actually doing. Lu Yiming leaps down the stairs and through the storage area. He is moving with insane speed to get away from the rest of the group. He kicks over a heavy ladder and a bucket to block the path. The loud crash echoes as he tries to slow down his pursuers. Shengbo looks over the railing and curses the sneaky brat. He realizes the kid just played them and escaped into the lower levels alone. Lu Yiming enters a quiet room and stops dead in his tracks. He sees something that catches him completely off guard and lets out a gasp. He stares down at a figure lying in a bed under the dim light. The room is silent as he tries to figure out who it is. Lu Yiming reaches out toward the bed as a pale hand suddenly twitches. He realizes too late that the person in front of him isn't human. The zombie on the bed lets out a massive roar and lunges. Lu Yiming falls back and screams, "What the fuck?" as he struggles to move. A survivor stares in horror as the infected man breaks his restraints on the bed. He shouts, asking why the bindings are loose and if the knot was tied poorly. Lu Yiming watches the scene from the side with a wicked smirk on his face. He touches his chin while clearly enjoying the chaos he just caused. Shengbo and the other students sprint down the long hallway toward the medical room. He looks completely stunned that things have gone south this quickly. The infected Chen Chong stands up and stumbles forward in the dark. Someone screams that Lu Yiming is a bastard for letting the monster out. The group panics, wondering if Lu is trying to get them all killed. They admit they completely misjudged the kid and can't believe his betrayal. Shan Shan tells the group they have to work together to lock Chen Chong back up. Shengbo orders everyone to use the combat methods Jiang taught. The four students charge across the room at the pale monster. One of them shouts at the top of his lungs for them to not let him bite. Shengbo sees an opening and prepares to strike the target. He shouts that now is their chance while lunging toward the infected man's back. Shengbo wraps his thick arms around Chen Chong's neck in a powerful chokehold. He grunts for the monster to take this while holding on tight. The rest of the students jump in to help restrain the thrashing zombie. Chen Chong growls in anger as the team works together to pin him. The elderly man shouts instructions to the group while pointing toward the hallway. He yells at them to be careful while tying the target up and moving him back to the medical room. Heavy hands slam down on the back of the infected man to pin him to the floor. The impact creates a loud thud as the group finally manages to restrain the struggling student. The old man stands in the hallway, staring down at the floor with a worried expression. He remains silent while sweat beads roll down his face after the intense physical struggle. Shengbo looks over his shoulder at the group while feeling a sense of confusion. He wonders if it's just him, or if it actually felt surprisingly easy to subdue the monster. The old man turns his head toward the storage area with a suspicious look. He thinks to himself that the brat has probably already grabbed the weapons from the armory by now. A young man stands in the doorway looking shocked as he realizes the storage is empty. He curses Jiang Xiaoyong, realizing he has no idea where the bastard hid the rest of the weapons. The traitor grips a submachine gun tightly as he prepares to turn on the group. He notes there was only one gun left, but it's enough to deal with everyone. From a high angle, the gunman aims his weapon down at the elderly man and Shengbo. He barks an order for everyone to get moving and head straight into the back room. Shengbo glares back at the gunman with pure rage on his face. He shouts that a big favor can easily turn into a grudge when people start acting high and mighty. The barrel of the gun stays pointed at the group while the traitor sneers. He thinks that some people are just natural ingrates who are impossible to teach a lesson. A man screams through the darkness, demanding total silence and compliance. Through a small window, a figure holds a gun steady while giving out orders to the survivors. The officer pushes forward into the dim light of the building. He barks at the others to move faster and hurry up without any more delay. High above the city, the crescent moon hangs in a cloudy night sky. Tall, dark apartment complexes loom over the silent and zombie-infested streets down below. The officers stand with Jiang near the empty intersection. One points toward the distance, telling him that Jinyu Mansion is just one more block away from here. The officer leans in to give Jiang specific instructions for later. He says to meet at Building 8 in Rongxian Garden via the side gate specifically. Jiang gives the men a confident thumbs up as he prepares to leave. He looks completely unfazed by the dangerous mission he is about to start tonight. Jiang walks toward the mansion while the officers stay behind. They admit he saved them but worry that heading into a horde will get him killed. The officer closes his eyes with a heavy sigh of regret. He says they warned him about everything, but it's still a shame for him. The city remains dark under the moon as the power stays out. There is still no phone signal, leaving everyone completely cut off from the world. Inside an apartment, a man in a suit looks frustrated and annoyed. He grumbles that he has no idea if Zhang Xingzhe finished his task yet. The thug in the white shirt screams that he is done holding back. He shouts that he needs to let off steam tonight to sleep. The man leaning against the wall agrees, saying Zhang is likely dead. He thinks their former boss isn't coming back to stop them now. Xiaoli trembles in the corner while the men talk about enjoying themselves. They claim they should live with no regrets before their time comes. The ponytail thug looks toward the window and asks if the others are coming. He bluntly says they should just let the woman die. He leans down and gives the woman a final, terrifying warning. He tells her that if she doesn't speak up, she will go last. A dark shadow moves across the room as the atmosphere turns cold. The thugs are too distracted by their own greed to notice the change. Outside in the dim hallway, a silent figure stands right by the doorway. The light from the stairwell highlights the entrance to the apartment. The ponytail man suddenly freezes and looks back with a shocked expression. He hears a sharp sound and realizes they are no longer alone. A bright flash of purple light slices through the air with incredible speed. The man grunts as the sudden attack catches him completely off guard. A dark silhouette stands in the doorway with glowing energy around its hands. The thugs stare in terror as a new threat finally arrives. Several small plush toys sit on a sunlit shelf in the quiet apartment. Below the shelf, a man in a white business shirt stands nearby. The lead thug smirks and tells the mother to stop pretending. He looks completely confident while his partners stand ready right behind his back. Xiaoli struggles against her captors and screams for them to let him go. She looks terrified as she tries to protect her young son. A heavy hand strikes the boy across the face with a loud crack. The thug looks down at the child with a completely heartless expression. The thug tells Xiaoli that she is the real target here. Shuai grips a small knife and swears to fight them with everything he has. The scene cuts to black as a pained grunt echoes through the apartment. Someone has been hit hard during the sudden chaos in the room. Shuai gasps and looks toward the doorway as a massive crashing sound rings out. He is terrified of what might be coming through the door. A man in a black suit is thrown violently across the floor after the door bursts open. Shuai stares at the body in total confusion. A dark silhouette with glowing blue eyes stands in the doorway and calls the boy a kid. Shuai shouts back, asking who the hell he is. Jiang looks at the boy and asks if Zhang Xingzhe is his father. He stands there calmly after taking out the first thug at the door. Shuai sits on the floor trembling as he stares up at the newcomer's boots. He can barely find his words and just mutters a few stammers. Xiaoli crouches on the carpet while clutching her torn clothes to her chest. She looks completely devastated and terrified by what just happened to her. A thug in a suit looms over Xiaoli and grabs her arm aggressively. He yells at her to speak up or they'll start having their fun. The large man looks down at the crying woman with a disgusting, wide grin on his face. He is clearly enjoying the total fear he's causing. The group of thugs stands around the room looking surprised by the sudden intrusion. One notes the kid has a lot of strength for kicking the door. One of the men looks over at his partner with an annoyed expression. He asks why he isn't throwing the little punk out of the room yet. Jiang charges into the center of the room as the thugs react with total shock. A heavy thud echoes through the apartment as the fight starts. One of the criminals breaks into a cold sweat while looking around the room. He shouts out in confusion, asking what is actually happening right now. Jiang moves like a blur with his eyes glowing bright blue. He lands a massive punch that sends one of the suited thugs flying through the air. The thug's head snaps back as the force of the blow connects squarely with his face. He lets out a pained scream while falling backward. The man in the white shirt looks up in pure terror as Jiang looms over him. He stammers out, asking who exactly this person is. A heavy fist slams directly into the man's jaw with a sickening crack. The impact sends him reeling backward as he loses his footing completely. Down the hall, a voice screams a final warning for everyone to move out of the way. They threaten to shoot anyone who stays there. Shengbo tells the students to just follow orders and get to the designated room. Shanshan protests, worried about what might happen to Brother Yong. Lu Yiming smirks and says he needs to show some ruthless decisiveness today. He believes this is the only way to finally establish his dominance. Lu Yiming levels a high-powered rifle and clicks the safety off with a dark grin. He looks ready to start firing on anyone in sight. The young woman cries out for Lu Yiming to stop what he is doing immediately. She looks desperate to prevent him from making a mistake. A strange mechanical clicking sound echoes through the hallway near the infirmary. Everyone stops and looks around, wondering where that noise is coming from now. A massive, hulking figure stands before the door as another metallic click rings out. The group watches from behind, frozen by the sudden, tense development. A key turns in the lock, shocking everyone who thought Chen Chong was just a mindless berserker. They can't believe he would actually use it. Lu Yiming stares ahead in total shock. Chen Chong's red eyes glow with hunger. Thick drool drips from the monster's mouth. Lu screams that zombies shouldn't use keys. He aims his rifle at the creature. The trigger clicks but nothing fires out. Lu panics as the gun suddenly jams. He stares down at his useless weapon. The infected student lunges forward with speed. Chen Chong roars directly in Lu's face. Lu screams how this is possible. He yells for help in pain. A shadow moves through the hallway. Chen Chong stops and turns back. He stands there soaked in blood. The zombie walks across the floor. He drags Lu Yiming's body away. Survivors ask what is happening now. The elder says he was calm. Chen Chong exhales a cold mist. Chen Chong exhales a cold mist. Shengbo stares at the blood. The students watch in total horror. A hand pulls the key out. Lu Yiming raises his arm high. He throws the key toward them. The key flies through the air. It clatters onto the hard floor. The infirmary doors slam shut loudly. Shengbo and Shanshan look confused. The survivors stare forward in silence.